Adrian Varelli sat motionless in his wheelchair, amidst the candlelight and the silent breaths of hundreds of powerful guests. The bride had vanished. No explanation, no response. Only emptiness remained before him, and silence killed reputations faster than any bullet. His empire was built on fear and control, but right now he was becoming a laughingstock. When his gaze locked onto a girl standing in the shadows, the event organizer, anonymous, harmless, a crazy idea flashed through his mind. $5 million. A contract. An unexpected turnaround. Follow this story to the end. Like and comment where you're watching so I know where the story has reached in the world. The silence in the cathedral wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that crawled under your skin and made you want to scream, just to break it. Alara Quinn stood in the shadows near the south entrance, clipboard pressed against her chest like a shield, watching the entire ceremony collapse in real time. She'd planned hundreds of events, weddings, galas, corporate nightmares that required her to smile through chaos. But nothing had prepared her for this. The bride was gone. Not late, not delayed. Gone. Alara had seen her 20 minutes ago, white dress trailing behind her like a ghost, face pale but composed. Then the procession music started, the doors opened, and nothing. Just an empty aisle and a groom sitting alone at the altar in a custom wheelchair that probably cost more than Alara's entire year's salary. Adrian Varelli. Even from across the massive space, she could feel the weight of him. Not physical weight. He was lean, sharp-edged, all-controlled fury packed into an immaculate black suit, but the kind of weight that bent the air around him made people instinctively step back. She'd met him exactly once during the planning process, and that had been enough. His voice was low, clipped, the kind that didn't waste syllables. His eyes, dark, unreadable, had scanned her like she was a line item on a budget sheet. She'd been grateful to deal with his assistant after that. Now she watched him sit there, absolutely motionless, while 300 of the city's most powerful people held their breath, waiting. The hum of whispers started low, a hiss that built like static. Alara's stomach twisted. This was a disaster, the kind that ended careers. Hers, specifically. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, the bride's coordinator. "She's not coming back. I don't know where she is. Fix this, fix this." Right. Alara's hands were shaking. She forced them still, forced her brain to kick into gear. There were protocols for this. She could make an announcement, call it a medical emergency, buy time. "Miss Quinn." The voice cut through the noise like a blade. She jerked her head up. One of Adrian's security team stood in front of her, expressionless, built like a wall. "Mr. Varelli would like to speak with you, now." Her throat went dry. What?" "Now," he repeated, already turning. She followed because there wasn't another option. Her heels clicked against the marble floor too loud, drawing eyes. She kept her gaze down, heart hammering against her ribs. The walk to the altar felt endless. Every step was a countdown to something she couldn't name but knew was bad. Adrian hadn't moved. He sat facing the empty aisle, hands resting on the arms of his wheelchair, posture so still it looked carved. She stopped a few feet away, uncertain, her mind screaming at her to run. "Closer," he said, without looking at her. She stepped forward. Her pulse was a drumbeat in her ears. Then he turned his head, and his eyes locked onto hers. It was like being pinned under a spotlight. His gaze didn't waver, didn't soften. It stripped her down to nerves and panic, saw everything she was trying to hide. She couldn't breathe. "You're the planner," he said. Not a question. "Yes." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Small miracle. "Then you know what just happened here." Yes." "Good." He leaned back slightly, fingers drumming once against the armrest. A single, deliberate movement. "I'm going to make you an offer. You have 30 seconds to decide." Alara blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Marry me." The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually stumbled back a step, mouth open, no sound coming out. Around them, the whispers grew louder. Someone coughed. A camera phone flashed somewhere in the back rows. "Excuse me?" she finally managed. Adrian's expression didn't change. "You heard me? Right now. In front of everyone here. I'll pay you $5 million. Her brain short-circuited. 5 million. The number didn't even feel real. It was an abstract concept, something that existed in movies, Not in her life where she was 3 months behind on student loans and her car made a noise that probably meant the transmission was dying. "You're insane," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. A flicker of something crossed his face. Amusement, maybe. Or contempt. Possibly. "Do you want the money or not?" This is... She looked around wildly, half expecting someone to laugh, to tell her this was a prank. But the faces staring back at her were dead serious, hungry, waiting to see what she'd do. "Why me?" "Because you're here. Because you're not connected to my world. Which means you're not a threat. And because I need someone right now, and you need money." His voice dropped just slightly. Still audible, but lower. Intimate in a way that made her skin prickle. "I can see it on you. The desperation. You're drowning, aren't you?" She hated that he was right. Hated the way he said it, like he was diagnosing a wound. Her jaw tightened. "This is crazy." "Yes or no, Miss Quinn. 20 seconds. Her hands were numb. Her thoughts spun in useless circles. This couldn't be happening. People didn't just... This wasn't how life worked. You didn't get offered millions to marry a stranger. You didn't stand in a cathedral full of witnesses and make decisions that could ruin everything. But then, what did she have to ruin? A job she hated that barely paid rent? An apartment with mold in the bathroom? A future that looked exactly like her present, stretched out gray and endless. She thought about her mother's medical bills, the ones she'd been dodging, the collection calls she didn't answer anymore. Thought about the weight of it all, pressing down, making it hard to breathe most days. $5 million. Her mouth opened. She heard herself say, "What's the catch? 1 year. You play the role. You don't embarrass me. At the end, you walk away with the money and we never speak again." He tilted his head slightly. 10 seconds. "What if I say no?" "Then I'll find someone else and you'll go back to being invisible." His eyes narrowed. 5 seconds. The word came out before she could think. "Yes." Silence. Then Adrian turned to face the crowd, his voice ringing out clear and absolute. "There's been a change of plans. Miss Alara Quinn has agreed to marry me instead. We'll proceed immediately." The explosion of noise was instantaneous. Gasps, shouts, the scrape of chairs as people stood. Alara's vision tunneled. She couldn't feel her legs. This wasn't real. This couldn't be. Adrian's hand closed around her wrist. His grip was firm, grounding. "Smile," he murmured, "or this falls apart right now." She forced her face into something resembling calm. Her cheeks ached. Someone, a man in robes she vaguely recognized as the officiant, stepped forward, looking shell-shocked but professional. He opened his mouth, started speaking. The words washed over her like static. Alara's mind screamed at her to run. Every instinct said this was wrong, dangerous, a trap she'd walked into with her eyes open. But her feet stayed planted, her hand stayed in Adrian's. And when the officiant asked if she took this man, she heard herself say, "I do." Adrian's response was immediate, clipped. "I do." Then by the power vested in me, the rest blurred. A ring appeared. Where had that come from? And slid onto her finger, cold and heavy. Adrian's hand was steady. Hers shook. The officiant pronounced them married, and the applause that followed felt like an avalanche. Adrian released her wrist and turned his wheelchair toward the exit. "Walk beside me," he said quietly. "Don't look back." She obeyed. Her legs moved mechanically, her brain still trying to catch up with what had just happened. The aisle stretched forever. Faces turned to watch them pass, some shocked, some calculating, some openly hostile. She recognized a few from the guest list: senators, CEOs, people who could destroy her with a phone call. What had she done? They reached the doors. Sunlight hit her face, blinding after the dim interior. A car waited at the curb, black and sleek, door already open. Adrian gestured for her to get in first. She climbed inside, the leather seat cool against her legs. He followed, transferring from the wheelchair with a practiced efficiency that was almost angry in its precision. The chair folded, disappeared into the trunk. The door shut. The silence inside the car was suffocating. Alara stared at her hands. The ring glinted. It was beautiful, platinum, simple, probably worth more than her life. Her breathing was too fast. Shallow. She was going to pass out or throw up or both. "Breathe," Adrian said from beside her. His voice was flat. "You're hyperventilating." "I just married a stranger for money. she shot back, her voice cracking. I think I'm allowed to hyperventilate. Fair enough. He pulled out his phone, started typing something. But do it quietly. We have a long drive ahead. Where are we going? My estate. We need to establish ground rules before this gets any more complicated. Alara turned to look at him fully for the first time since getting in the car. He was focused on his phone, jaw set, the same unreadable mask he'd worn at the altar. No emotion, no acknowledgement of the insanity they'd just committed. Just cold clinical control. Do you even care that your actual bride just abandoned you? The question came out sharper than she intended. Adrian's fingers paused on the screen. He didn't look up. No. That's it? Just no? It was a business arrangement. She made her choice. I made mine. Now he did glance at her, and there was something dark in his expression. Something that made her want to press herself against the car door. Don't mistake what just happened for anything romantic, Miss Quinn. You're a solution to a problem. Nothing more. The words stung more than they should have. She turned away, staring out the window as the city blurred past. Buildings gave way to trees, manicured lawns, estates hidden behind gates and walls. Old money. The kind of wealth that didn't advertise. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, saw 17 missed calls, 43 texts. Most from Marcus, increasingly frantic. A few from her roommate Jenna, one from her mother. She couldn't deal with any of it right now. You'll need to turn that off, Adrian said. No contact with your previous life until we've sorted out the narrative. Excuse me? Your phone, turn it off. I'll provide you with a new one. Secure line. You can't just... I can, and I am. You agreed to this, Miss Quinn. That means you follow my rules. His tone left no room for argument. Alara's hands curled into fists. She wanted to scream at him, to demand he turn the car around, to take back the last 20 minutes of her life. But the ring on her finger was real. The contract, unspoken but binding in its way, was real. And $5 million was very, very real. She powered off her phone without another word. The estate appeared after another 10 minutes of silence. It wasn't a house. It was a compound, sprawling, modern, all glass and stone and architectural lines that probably won awards. The car pulled through gates that opened automatically, rolled up a circular driveway, and stopped in front of massive double doors. Adrian was out of the car before she could process. His wheelchair unfolded, and he transferred into it with the same controlled fury as before. A woman appeared in the doorway, older, severe, wearing a gray suit that screamed assistant or housekeeper or both. Mr. Varelli, she said, her voice crisp. I wasn't expecting you back so soon. Plans changed, Margaret. This is Alara Quinn, my wife. Get her settled in the East Wing. I'll meet her in my office in 1 hour. Margaret's face didn't move, but Alara caught the microsecond of shock in her eyes before it vanished. Of course. This way, Mrs. Varelli. Mrs. Varelli. The name felt like a noose. Alara followed Margaret inside, barely registering the opulence around her. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, art that probably belonged in museums. It was beautiful and cold and utterly alien. Margaret led her up the sweeping staircase, down a hallway lined with closed doors, and finally into a bedroom that was bigger than Alara's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a garden. A bed that could sleep 4 people sat in the center, dressed in white linens that looked untouched. There are clothes in the closet, Margaret said. Bathroom through that door. If you need anything, use the intercom. She pointed to a panel on the wall. Mr. Varelli will expect punctuality. Then she left, closing the door with a soft click. Alara stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by luxury she'd never asked for, wearing a stranger's ring, bound by a deal she didn't fully understand, and she had no idea what happened next. She moved to the window, pressed her forehead against the glass. The garden below was immaculate, hedges trimmed into perfect lines, flowers arranged by color, a fountain at the center. Everything controlled, everything in its place, just like her now. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and wide-eyed. She barely recognized herself. 24 hours ago, she'd been worried about making rent. Now she was married to one of the most powerful men in the city, living in a mansion, playing a role she didn't know how to perform. The enormity of it crashed over her, and she sank onto the edge of the bed, hands shaking again. What had she done? What had she agreed to? Adrian had said 1 year, but a year of what? Pretending, lying, living in this gilded cage while he, what, used her as a prop? A shield? She thought about the way he'd looked at her in the cathedral, the cold calculation, the absolute certainty that she'd say yes because she had no other choice. He'd been right, and she hated him for it. A knock on the door made her jump. She stood quickly, wiping at her eyes even though she hadn't cried. "Come in." A younger woman entered, carrying a garment bag. "Mrs. Varelli, I'm Sophie. I'll be helping you prepare for the meeting with Mr. Varelli." "Prepare?" Sophie smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You'll want to change. First impressions matter here." Elara glanced down at herself. She was still wearing the simple black dress she'd put on that morning for work. Professional, but unremarkable. Invisible, just like Adrian had said. "Right," she muttered. "Can't have the fake wife looking shabby." Sophie's smile faltered for just a second. Then she laid the garment bag on the bed and unzipped it, revealing a dress that probably cost more than Elara's car. Deep green, elegant, the kind of thing she'd never have chosen for herself. "If you'd prefer something else—" "No, it's fine." Elara took the dress, disappeared into the bathroom before Sophie could say anything else. The bathroom was obscene. All marble and gold fixtures, a tub big enough to swim in, mirrors everywhere. She avoided looking at herself as she changed, her hands fumbling with the zipper. The dress fit perfectly. Of course it did. Adrian probably had her measurements already, probably knew her shoe size, her favorite color, every detail he'd need to control her. She emerged to find Sophie waiting with heels and jewelry. "I can do my own—" "Please, Mrs. Varelli, it's my job." There was something in her tone, not unkind, but firm. Elara recognized it, the voice of someone who knew the rules and wasn't about to let a newcomer break them. She sat. Let Sophie work. The heels were added, a delicate necklace, earrings that caught the light. When it was done, Sophie stepped back, assessing. "You look perfect," she said. Elara didn't feel perfect. She felt like a doll being dressed for display. "Mr. Varelli's office is on the first floor, West Wing," Sophie continued. "I can show you—" "I'll find it." Elara stood, steadier than she expected. "Thank you." Sophie nodded and left. Alone again, Elara took a breath. Then another. She could do this. It was just a meeting, just a conversation. She'd faced worse. She hadn't, but lying to herself seemed easier than the truth. She made her way downstairs, following the path Margaret had taken in reverse. The house was a maze, but she eventually found a door slightly ajar, light spilling out. She knocked. "Enter." Adrian's office was exactly what she'd expected. Dark wood, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk that looked like it belonged to a dictator. He sat behind it, wheelchair pulled up close, papers spread in front of him. He didn't look up when she entered. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair across from him. She sat. The chair was leather, expensive, uncomfortable in the way things were when they cared more about status than function. Adrian finished whatever he was writing, set his pen down with deliberate care, and finally met her eyes. "We need to establish parameters," he said. "This arrangement works only if we're both clear on expectations." "Parameters," Elara repeated, her voice flat. "Yes. First, in public, you are my wife. Devoted, supportive, exactly what people expect. You attend events with me, you smile, you play the role. Any deviation from that, and the deal is off." "What about in private?" "In private, we stay out of each other's way. You have your wing, I have mine. We're not friends, we're not confidants. We're business partners in a very specific transaction." Elara's jaw tightened. "So I'm supposed to pretend to be in love with you when people are watching, and then what? Pretend you don't exist the rest of the time?" "Exactly." "That's insane." "That's the deal." He leaned back slightly, studying her. "You'll have access to everything you need. Clothes, credit cards, transportation. There will be a staff to assist you, but your movements will be monitored. You don't leave without informing security. You don't speak to the press without approval. You don't do anything that could jeopardize this arrangement." "You mean I'm a prisoner?" "I mean you're protected. There's a difference." "Is there?" Adrian's expression hardened. "You have no idea what my world is like, Miss Quinn. The people in that cathedral today. Half of them would destroy you for sport if they thought it would hurt me. The other half would use you as leverage. So yes, you'll be monitored, for your sake as much as mine." Elara wanted to argue, But something in his tone stopped her. There was truth there, buried under the ice. Real concern, or at least the shadow of it. "What about the money?" she asked instead. "You'll receive the first installment within 48 hours. 2 million, wired to an account I'll set up for you, untraceable, secure. The remaining 3 million comes at the end of the year, provided you've fulfilled your obligations. And if I leave before then? You forfeit everything, and I'll make sure you never work in this city again." He said it without malice, just fact. "So I suggest you commit to seeing this through." Her hands curled into fists in her lap. Every instinct screamed at her to walk out, to tell him to keep his money and his threats. But the practical part of her brain, the part that had learned to survive on scraps and willpower, knew she couldn't. $2 million. Even half the promised amount was life-changing. It was her mother's medical bills paid. It was freedom from debt. It was a future that didn't look like drowning. "Fine," she said. "What else?" Adrian reached into a drawer, pulled out a thick stack of papers. "This is the contract. Read it. Sign it. It covers everything we've discussed and more. Infidelity clauses, non-disclosure agreements, behavioral expectations." Alara took the contract, flipped through the pages. Legalese swam before her eyes. She wasn't a lawyer. She had no idea what half of this meant. "You're expected to sign this now?" she asked. "You're expected to trust that I'm not going to screw you over any more than necessary." He paused. "Or you can walk away. But we both know you won't." She hated him, hated the certainty in his voice, the way he read her so easily. But he was right. She found a pen on his desk, clicked it open, and signed her name at the bottom of the last page. The ink was black, permanent, binding. "Good," Adrian said, taking the contract back. "We'll have our first public appearance tomorrow night. A gala. You'll need to be ready by 7. Tomorrow? Married me. Yes. And now the world needs to see that it's real." He folded his hands on the desk. "Is there anything else?" 1,000 questions crowded her throat. She swallowed them all down. "No." "Then you're dismissed." Alara stood, her legs unsteady. She made it to the door before his voice stopped her. "Miss Quinn." She turned. Adrian was watching her, something unreadable in his expression. "You did well today. In the cathedral. Most people would have run." It wasn't quite a compliment, more an acknowledgement, but coming from him it felt significant. "Most people aren't desperate," she said quietly. "No," he agreed. "They're not." She left before he could say anything else, before the weight of his gaze could pin her in place again. The hallway felt longer on the way back. The house felt bigger. Everything felt wrong and surreal and inescapable. Back in her room, Alara collapsed onto the bed, still wearing the green dress, the heels, the jewelry. She stared at the ceiling, at the chandelier that hung above her like a threat or a promise. She couldn't tell which. She was married. To a man she didn't know. For money she desperately needed. For 1 year of her life that suddenly felt both infinite and impossibly short. Her phone, her old phone, now dead in her purse, was the only connection to the world she'd left behind. To Jenna, to her mother, to everyone who would want answers she couldn't give. What would she tell them? What could she tell them? The truth was impossible. The lie was inevitable. She closed her eyes, exhaustion crashing over her. Tomorrow there would be a gala. Tomorrow she'd have to smile and pretend and play the role Adrian demanded. Tomorrow she'd step into the spotlight as Mrs. Varelli and pray she didn't shatter under the scrutiny. But tonight, alone in this too-big room, she let herself feel the full weight of what she'd done. And she wondered if $5 million was enough to buy back a soul once you'd sold it. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed midnight. The sound echoed, lonely and final. Alara Varelli now pulled a blanket over herself and waited for sleep that wouldn't come, because the real nightmare was just beginning, and she had 364 days left to survive it. The gala dress arrived at noon, delivered by a woman who introduced herself as Vivienne, personal stylist, apparently part of the package deal Alara had signed her life away for. The dress was black, floor-length, cut in a way that would show just enough skin to be interesting without crossing into scandalous. Alara held it up to the light, watching the fabric shimmer like oil on water. "Mr. Varelli selected it himself," Vivienne said, unpacking shoes, jewelry, a clutch that probably cost more than Alara's college tuition. "He has excellent taste." Alara didn't respond. She was too busy trying not to think about the fact that Adrian had been thinking about her body, what would look good on it, what would make the right impression. It felt invasive, clinical, like being a mannequin in a store window. "We should start hair and makeup at 4, Vivian continued, laying everything out with precision. "That gives us 3 hours to prepare." 3 hours to get dressed? Vivian's smile was patient, the kind you'd give a child who didn't understand the rules yet. 3 hours to become Mrs. Varelli. Right. Because Alara Quinn didn't exist anymore. Not in public, not in the world she was about to step into. She'd barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the cathedral, heard the gasps, felt Adrian's hand closing around her wrist like a shackle. Her brain kept replaying the decision, picking it apart, looking for the moment she could have said no. But the moment never came. It had been inevitable from the second she'd said yes. Now she was here, standing in a bedroom that wasn't hers, wearing a life that didn't fit, about to walk into a room full of people who would smell weakness like blood in the water. "Mrs. Varelli?" Vivian's voice pulled her back. "Shall we begin?" Alara nodded. What else was there to do? The transformation took exactly 3 hours. Vivian worked with the efficiency of a surgeon, every movement precise, every choice deliberate. Hair swept up, makeup that made Alara's eyes look darker, her cheekbones sharper. The dress slid on like a second skin. The shoes added 3 inches and made her calves ache immediately. When it was done, Vivian stepped back, assessing. "Perfect. Mr. Varelli will be pleased." Alara looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger, polished, elegant, untouchable. Everything Alara had never been and never wanted to be. "He's waiting downstairs," Vivian said, already packing her tools. "Don't keep him waiting." She left, and Alara was alone again with the stranger in the mirror. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs, forced herself to breathe. This was just a performance, just a role. She'd smile, stand next to Adrian, play the part. It would be fine. It wouldn't be fine, but the lie was necessary. She made her way downstairs, each step careful in the ridiculous heels. The house was quieter now, the staff invisible, the kind of silence that came from money and control. She found Adrian in the foyer, already positioned by the door, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than most people's cars. He looked up as she approached, and for a brief second something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or appreciation. Then it was gone, replaced by the same cold assessment he'd given her yesterday. "You look acceptable," he said. "Thanks. You too." The sarcasm came out before she could stop it. Adrian's mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. "The car is waiting. We'll arrive fashionably late. Makes an entrance more memorable." Memorable. Right. Alara moved toward the door, but his voice stopped her. "Miss Quinn?" She turned. "It's Mrs. Varelli now, remember?" "Alara, then." He rolled closer, the wheelchair moving silently across the marble. "Before we go in there, you need to understand something. These people are predators. They'll smile at you, compliment your dress, ask you harmless questions, but they're all looking for weaknesses, anything they can use. Against you or against me? Both. We're a unit now, whether we like it or not. If you falter, I fall. And if I fall, you get buried in the rubble." He held her gaze. "So when we walk in there, you don't look nervous, you don't look uncertain, you look like you belong at my side. Understand?" Alara's jaw tightened. "I'm not an idiot, Adrian. I know how to fake confidence." "Good. Let's see if you can do it while 300 people dissect your every move." The drive was silent. Adrian spent it on his phone, typing messages with sharp, angry jabs of his thumbs. Alara stared out the window, watching the city blur past. Streetlights reflected off glass buildings, neon signs advertising lives she'd never touch. Normal lives, simple lives. She'd traded that for this. The gala was being held at the Whitmore Estate, a sprawling mansion on the edge of the city that had been converted into an event space for the obscenely wealthy. The car pulled up to a red carpet, an actual red carpet, lined with photographers and cameras. Flashes started going off before they even stopped. Alara's stomach dropped. "You didn't say there would be press." "There's always press." Adrian's hand found hers, his grip firm. "Remember what I said. You don't falter." The door opened, sound rushed in, shouted questions, Camera clicks, the hum of a crowd waiting for blood. Adrian exited first, transferring to his wheelchair with practiced ease. Then he extended a hand to Alara. She took it, stepped out into the lights. The noise was overwhelming. Questions came from every direction, overlapping, impossible to parse. She caught fragments. Mr. Varelli, who is she? Is it true you married her yesterday? Miss Quinn, how does it feel? Adrian's hand tightened on hers. Smile, he murmured. Don't answer. Just smile. She did. Her face felt like a mask, stretched too tight. The cameras kept flashing, blinding bursts that left spots in her vision. Adrian moved forward, and she walked beside him, her free hand resting lightly on the back of his wheelchair, like Vivienne had coached her. The gesture looked supportive, loving even. It felt like a lie. They made it inside. The noise cut off as the doors closed behind them, replaced by the softer sounds of string music and clinking champagne glasses. The ballroom was massive, vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, walls lined with art that probably belonged in museums. People clustered in small groups, elegant and dangerous. Every conversation a potential minefield. Heads turned as they entered. Whispers followed. Adrian's hand was still on hers. We make a circuit. You stay close. Let me do most of the talking. If someone asks you a direct question, keep it brief. Pleasant, nothing controversial. What counts as controversial? Anything honest? A woman approached before Alara could respond. Mid-50s, dripping in diamonds, smile sharp enough to cut. Adrian, darling, what a surprise. Catherine. Adrian's voice was smooth, easy. Nothing like the clipped tone he used with Alara. You look stunning, as always. Catherine's eyes slid to Alara, assessing. And this must be your bride. How unexpected. Alara, this is Catherine Marsh. She sits on half the boards in the city. More than half, darling. Catherine extended a hand. Her grip was cold, firm. Alara Quinn, isn't it? I did some digging after yesterday's little spectacle. Event planner. How quaint. Alara forced her smile to stay in place. Nice to meet you. Is it? Catherine's laugh was crystalline. Tell me, dear, how does one go from arranging flowers to marrying Adrian Varelli? It's quite the leap. The claws were out. Alara could feel Adrian's gaze on her, waiting to see if she'd crack. Sometimes opportunities present themselves, Alara said carefully. I was fortunate enough to say yes. Fortunate? What a lovely way to put it. Catherine turned back to Adrian. She's charming. I do hope she lasts longer than the last one. Adrian's expression didn't change. I'm sure she will. Now, if you'll excuse us, of course. Enjoy the evening. Catherine drifted away, already whispering to the woman beside her. Alara's hands were clenched so tight, her nails bit into her palms. I hate her. Get in line. Adrian steered them toward the bar. Champagne? Something stronger. He almost smiled at that. Almost. The next hour was a blur of introductions, fake smiles, and conversations that felt like chess matches. Everyone wanted to know about the wedding. Why so sudden? Why her? What was Adrian thinking? The questions were veiled in politeness, but the judgment underneath was clear. Alara stuck to the script Adrian had given her. Brief answers. Nothing controversial. She let him lead, watched how he navigated the room with the precision of a general on a battlefield. Every word calculated, every gesture deliberate. She was exhausted by the time they found a quiet corner near the windows. Her face hurt from smiling. Her feet were screaming in the heels. She leaned against the glass, letting the cool surface ground her. You're doing better than I expected, Adrian said. Low bar. Fair. He accepted a champagne flute from a passing waiter, took a sip. Catherine will spread rumors, but that was inevitable. Let her. By tomorrow, everyone will have moved on to the next scandal. And if they don't, then we adapt. He glanced at her. You're not going to ask me about the last one? Alara blinked. What? Catherine's comment. About me hoping you last longer. You're not curious? She was. Desperately. But something in his tone warned her off. It's none of my business. No, he agreed. It's not. They stood in silence, watching the crowd. Alara's gaze caught on a man across the room, tall, dark-haired, staring directly at Adrian with an intensity that made her uneasy. Who's that? She asked. Adrian followed her gaze. His entire body went rigid. No one important. He's looking at you like he wants to kill you.
Yes, he does. Adrian's voice was flat. His name is Marcus Kane. We used to be business partners. Now we're not. What happened? I ruined him. Adrian said it without emotion, just fact. He made a mistake. I capitalized on it. He lost everything. Now he spends his time trying to return the favor. Alara's stomach twisted. Should I be worried? Not tonight. He won't make a scene here. But Adrian's hand tightened on the armrest of his wheelchair, knuckles white. Marcus started walking toward them. Adrian, Alara said quietly. I see him. Marcus stopped a few feet away, champagne in hand, smile cold. Adrian, congratulations on the wedding. I heard it was quite the affair. Marcus, Adrian's voice was ice. Enjoying the party? Immensely. Though I have to admit I'm curious. Marcus's gaze slid to Alara. This is the bride, I assume, the event planner who stepped in at the last moment? Alara Varelli, she said, forcing steel into her voice. And you are? Marcus Kane, an old friend of your husband's. His smile widened. Tell me, Mrs. Varelli, did Adrian mention what happened to his last fiancée? The one who left him at the altar? Adrian's jaw clenched. Walk away, Marcus. I'm just making conversation. Marcus took a sip of champagne, eyes never leaving Alara's. See, Adrian has a habit of making people disappear when they become inconvenient. Business partners, competitors, fiancés. I wonder if you'll be next. Alara's heart was pounding, but she kept her face blank. I appreciate the concern, but I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you look like someone who got in way over her head. Marcus leaned closer, voice dropping. Whatever he promised you, it's not worth it. He'll use you up and throw you away the moment you stop being useful. That's enough. Adrian's voice cut through the space between them like a blade. You've said your piece, now leave. Marcus straightened, still smiling. Of course. Wouldn't want to cause a scene. Enjoy your evening, Mrs. Varelli. I have a feeling it'll be one of your last good ones. He walked away. Alara's hands were shaking. She crossed her arms to hide it. Are you all right? Adrian asked quietly. What did he mean about making people disappear? He's trying to get under your skin. Don't let him. That's not an answer. Adrian's eyes met hers, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something real there. Something raw. He's right that I've destroyed people who got in my way, but I've never hurt someone who didn't deserve it. And you... He stopped, seemed to reconsider. You're safe, as long as you keep your end of the deal. It should have been reassuring. It wasn't. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. More introductions, more forced smiles, more questions she couldn't answer honestly. By the time they left, Alara's entire body ached. She collapsed into the car, kicked off the heels, and closed her eyes. You did well, Adrian said from beside her. I feel like I've been through a war. You have. Welcome to my world. The drive back was silent again, but different this time. Less hostile, more exhausted, like they were both too tired to keep up the pretense. Back at the estate, Alara headed straight for her room, desperate to get out of the dress, out of the jewelry, out of the performance. But Adrian's voice stopped her at the base of the stairs. Tomorrow morning, my office, 8 o'clock. She turned. Why? We need to discuss what comes next. The gala was just the beginning. Alara's stomach sank. There's more? There's always more. He rolled past her toward his wing of the house. Get some rest. You'll need it. She watched him disappear down the hallway, then climbed the stairs to her room. The dress came off in pieces, the jewelry piled on the dresser, the makeup scrubbed away until her face felt raw. She stood in the shower until the water ran cold, trying to wash away the feeling of being watched, judged, dissected. It didn't work. She fell into bed at midnight, exhausted but unable to sleep. Her mind kept replaying Marcus's words. He'll use you up and throw you away. The certainty in his voice. The warning. Was he right? She thought about Adrian, about the way he'd looked when Marcus approached. The tension in his shoulders. The white-knuckled grip on his wheelchair. He'd been afraid. Maybe not of Marcus, but of something. What was she really part of? The question followed her into restless sleep,
and when she woke at 7 the next morning, it was still there, waiting. She dressed in simple clothes, jeans, a sweater, no makeup. If Adrian wanted Mrs. Varelli, he could wait. Right now she was just Alara, and she needed to feel like herself, even if it was a lie. His office door was open when she arrived at 8. He was already there, of course, paper spread across his desk, phone to his ear. He gestured for her to sit without breaking his conversation. I don't care what the board thinks. Move forward with the acquisition. If they have a problem, they can take it up with me directly. He ended the call, set the phone down with deliberate care. You're punctual. Good. You said 8.
I did. He slid a folder across the desk toward her. Open it. She did. Inside were photographs. Her, from last night, at the gala. Dozens of them. Her standing next to Adrian, smiling at Catherine Marsh, her hand on his wheelchair. Professional shots, clearly from hired photographers. These will be in the society pages by this afternoon, Adrian said. The narrative is already set. We're the unexpected love story, the billionaire and the ordinary girl. It's cliché, but it works. Alara stared at the photos. She looked happy in them. In love, even. The lie was perfect. What about your ex-fiancée? She asked. The one who left. Won't people ask about her? Adrian's expression hardened. Victoria signed an NDA. She won't talk. But Marcus is a problem I'm handling. You don't need to worry about him. He threatened me last night. He threatened the idea of you. There's a difference. Adrian leaned back, fingers steepled. But you're right that he's dangerous, which is why we need to accelerate the timeline. Alara's stomach dropped. What timeline? Public appearances, interviews. We need to saturate the narrative before Marcus can poison it. There's a charity luncheon on Thursday, a business dinner Friday, and next week we're doing a joint interview with Metropolitan Magazine. An interview? I can't. You can and you will. They'll ask about how we met, how I proposed, what it's like being married to me. You'll have talking points. You'll memorize them, and you'll deliver them perfectly. This is insane. This is necessary. Adrian's voice dropped. Marcus isn't the only threat. There are people who want to see me fail, who see this marriage as weakness. If we don't control the story, they will. And if they do, the deal is off. You go back to your life with nothing. The words hit like a slap. Alara's hands curled into fists. You're blackmailing me. I'm reminding you of the terms you agreed to. I agreed to play a role, not become a trained SEAL performing on command. Then maybe you should have read the contract more carefully. Adrian's eyes were cold. You wanted the money, Miss Quinn. This is what it costs. Alara stood, chair scraping against the floor. You're a bastard. Yes, I am, but I'm a bastard who's keeping his word. Are you? The question hung between them, sharp and accusing. Alara wanted to scream, to flip the desk, to walk out and never come back. But the money, God, the money, was already in her account. $2 million she couldn't afford to lose. She sat back down. Fine, what do I need to do? Adrian's expression didn't change, but something in his posture relaxed. Smart choice. We'll start prep this afternoon. Vivienne will work with you on presentation, Margaret on etiquette, and I'll handle the talking points. Anything else? Yes. He pulled out another folder, thicker than the first. Background on me. My family, my business, key players in my world. You need to know all of it. We can't have you stumbling when someone asks a basic question. Alara took the folder, felt the weight of it. How much of this is public knowledge? About half. The rest is complicated. Complicated how? Adrian's jaw tightened. My father built this empire on ruthless decisions and strategic cruelty. When he died, I inherited both the company and the enemies. Some of those enemies are still active. Some are waiting for me to show weakness. He met her eyes. The wheelchair made me a target. This marriage was supposed to stabilize things. Instead, it's opened new vulnerabilities. Because of me. Because of the circumstances. Victoria leaving was planned, in a sense. She was paid to walk away. Alara's breath caught. What? It was a setup, a test to see who would move against me when I appeared vulnerable. I didn't expect you to say yes when I offered the deal, but you did. So now we're improvising.
You're telling me this whole thing was some kind of strategic game? Everything is a strategic game, Ilara. The sooner you understand that, the safer you'll be. She wanted to throw the folder at his face, wanted to tell him exactly what she thought of his games and his manipulations, but instead, she stood, folder tucked under her arm. I'll study this. Anything else? Dinner tonight, 7. We need to practice being a couple in private before we do it in public. You've got to be kidding. I'm not. If we can't convince each other, we'll never convince anyone else. Ilara left before she said something she'd regret. The folder felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She made it back to her room, locked the door, and threw the folder onto the bed. Then she sat down and started reading. Adrian Varelli, born to Marcus Varelli Sr. and Elena Varelli. Only child. Father died 5 years ago in a car accident. Though the report hinted at speculation, it might not have been an accident. Adrian took over Varelli Industries at 25, ruthless and efficient, expanded into tech, real estate, pharmaceuticals, made billions, made enemies. The accident that put him in the wheelchair happened 3 years ago. Sabotage suspected but never proven. He'd been at a construction site, inspecting a new development, when scaffolding collapsed. 3 workers died. Adrian survived but lost the use of his legs. The report was clinical, but Ilara could read between the lines. The guilt, the anger, the way he'd thrown himself into work afterward, becoming even more isolated, even more feared. She kept reading. Business rivals, former partners, people he'd destroyed to build his empire. The list was long and brutal. And somewhere in that list was Marcus Kane, former VP of Operations, forced out after a failed merger that cost the company millions. Adrian had taken the blame publicly, but made sure Marcus paid privately. Blacklisted him, ruined his reputation, left him with nothing. No wonder Marcus wanted revenge. Ilara closed the folder, her head pounding. This was the man she'd married. Not the cold, controlled figure in the wheelchair, but the history behind him. The violence, the calculated destruction. And she was supposed to smile and pretend to love him. A knock on the door startled her. Mrs. Varelli, it's Margaret. Mr. Varelli would like you to join him in the library. Ilara glanced at the clock. It was barely noon. I thought dinner wasn't until 7. This is separate. He said it's important. She found Adrian in the library, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books that probably cost more than most people's houses. He sat near the window, light streaming in, a glass of whiskey in his hand. You drink at noon? Ilara asked. Only on days that require it. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. She did. The library was quieter than the rest of the house, insulated somehow. Peaceful, if you ignored the tension crackling between them. I owe you an apology, Adrian said abruptly. Ilara blinked. I'm sorry, what? This morning, in my office, I was harsher than necessary. He took a sip of whiskey, gaze fixed on the glass. You're right that I'm asking a lot, more than I should, probably, but I need you to understand the stakes. I'm starting to. She thought about the folder, the enemies, the history. Marcus isn't going to let this go, is he? No, he'll escalate. Try to find leverage. That's why we need to be airtight, no cracks. And if he finds one anyway? Adrian's eyes met hers. Then we deal with it, together. The word hung between them. Together. Like they were actually a team, not just 2 people trapped in a transaction. Why did you really ask me? Ilara said quietly. That day in the cathedral? You could have chosen anyone. Why me? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, almost honest. Because you looked terrified, but you didn't run. Because when I looked at you, I saw someone who understood desperation, who knew what it meant to have no good choices. He paused. And because I thought you'd be easy to control. Past tense? You're more resilient than I expected. It's complicating things. Ilara didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. They sat in silence, the afternoon light shifting across the floor. For the first time since this nightmare started, the quiet between them didn't feel hostile, just heavy, weighted with things neither of them knew how to say. Finally, Adrian set down his glass. The dinner tonight. We're going to talk. Really talk. Not as employer and employee. As 2 people stuck in the same mess trying to figure out how to survive it. And if I don't want to talk, then we sit in silence. But we do it together.
She studied him, tried to see past the armor, the calculated coldness. Underneath it all, he looked tired. Not physically, though there were shadows under his eyes, but soul-deep tired, the kind that came from carrying weight too long. "All right," she said. 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock, he agreed. She left him there, surrounded by his books and his whiskey and his carefully constructed solitude. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. Vivian returned to coach her on posture, on how to sit, stand, move like she belonged in Adrian's world. Margaret drilled her on names, who mattered, who didn't, who to avoid. The talking points arrived in a leather binder, 20 pages of scripted responses to potential questions. By 6:30, Alara's brain felt like it was leaking out her ears. She changed into something simple for dinner, a dress that wasn't a performance, just comfortable, and made her way to the dining room at 7 exactly. Adrian was already there, positioned at the head of the table, 2 place settings, close together, candles lit, though the gesture felt more functional than romantic. "You came," he said. "I said I would. You could have changed your mind. So could you." He gestured to the seat beside him. "Sit. Food's on the way." She sat. The table was massive, could easily seat 20, but they were clustered at one end, intimate despite the space. A staff member brought the first course, some kind of soup that smelled incredible. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the clink of spoons against china. Then Adrian spoke. "Tell me about your mother." Alara's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. "What?" "Your mother. The background check mentioned medical bills. I want to know." She set the spoon down carefully. "Why?" "Because if we're going to do this, really do this, I need to know who you are. Not just the surface, the real you." It felt like a trap, but his expression was genuine, or as close to genuine as she'd seen from him. "She has MS," Alara said finally. "Multiple sclerosis. Diagnosed 5 years ago. It's progressive. The treatments are expensive and insurance doesn't cover half of it. That's why you needed the money. Part of it. The other part is I'm drowning in student debt from a degree I'm not using and a job that barely pays rent." She picked up her spoon again, stirred the soup without eating. "I was desperate. You were right about that." "I'm sorry." The words were so unexpected that Alara actually laughed. "Are you?" "Yes. Genuinely." Adrian set down his own spoon. "My mother died when I was 12. Cancer. My father threw money at the problem until she was gone, then threw himself into work to forget. I know what it's like to watch someone suffer and feel powerless." The admission cracked something open between them. Alara felt the shift, subtle but real. "Is that why you're like this?" she asked. "The control thing, the need to manage everything." "Probably. Therapy's never been my strong suit." His mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "What about you? What's your excuse for saying yes to a stranger's proposal?" "Survival, self-preservation, a really poor sense of judgment." "All valid." They fell back into silence, but it was different now. Less hostile, more human. The rest of dinner passed with small conversations. Nothing deep, but nothing superficial either. Adrian asked about her work, her life before this. She asked about his business, carefully avoiding the darker parts. By the time dessert arrived, something had shifted. They weren't friends, but they weren't enemies either. Maybe they were just 2 people trying to navigate the same shipwreck. As the staff cleared the plates, Adrian leaned back in his wheelchair. "I have a question." "Go ahead." "Do you regret it? Saying yes?" Alara considered, thought about the cathedral, the money, the last 2 days of her life. "Ask me in a year." "Fair enough." She stood to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Alara." She turned. "Thank you for tonight, for trying." The words were simple, but they felt significant, like he'd handed her something fragile and was waiting to see if she'd break it. "You're welcome," she said quietly. Back in her room, Alara lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. The conversation replayed in her mind. The way Adrian had looked when he talked about his mother. The genuine apology. The question about regret. He was still a bastard, still manipulative, still dangerous, but maybe, just maybe, he was human underneath it all.
And that terrified her more than anything else. Because if he was human, then she could care about him. And caring about Adrian Varelli felt like the worst mistake she could possibly make. The next morning, everything changed. Alara woke to pounding on her door. She stumbled out of bed, yanked it open to find Margaret, face pale, clutching a tablet. "You need to see this." Alara took the tablet. The screen showed a news article, headline screaming in bold letters. Varelli's contract. Bride. Exclusive expose reveals marriage is a business deal. Her stomach dropped. She scrolled down, saw screenshots of the contract, her signature, clear as day. Terms laid out in brutal detail, $5 million, 1 year. The whole sordid arrangement exposed for the world to see. How? We don't know yet. But it's everywhere. Every news site, every social media platform. Margaret's voice was tight. "Mr. Varelli wants to see you immediately." Alara barely registered getting dressed, barely remembered walking to his office. Her mind was static, white noise, panic clawing at her throat. Adrian was on the phone when she entered, his voice a whip crack of fury. "I don't care how it happened. Find out who leaked it. Now!" He slammed the phone down, eyes finding hers. The look on his face made her blood run cold. "Did you do this?" His voice was quiet, deadly. "What? No, Because if you thought you could blackmail me for more money, you severely miscalculated." "I didn't leak anything," Alara's voice broke. "Why would I? This destroys me too." Adrian stared at her, searching for the lie. She held his gaze, shaking but steady. Finally, he exhaled. "Marcus, you think—" "I know. He's the only one with the resources and the motive." Adrian's hands clenched into fists. "He must have hacked my servers, found the contract." "What do we do?" Adrian's eyes met hers, and in them she saw something that made her knees weak. Fear. "We fight back, together, or we both go down." The word echoed in her mind as she stood there, the world crashing down around them. Together. There was no turning back now. The phone hadn't stopped ringing in 3 hours. Adrian's assistant fielded calls from board members, investors, journalists who smelled blood in the water. Alara sat in the corner of his office, watching him work through the crisis with the mechanical precision of someone who'd done this before. But there was something different in his movements now, a tightness around his eyes. His hands gripped the armrests of his wheelchair until his knuckles went white. He was afraid, and if Adrian Varelli was afraid, they were already dead. "Pull every resource we have," Adrian said into the phone, voice clipped. "I want to know who accessed those files, when, and from where. I don't care if you have to burn half the IT department to find out." He ended the call, threw the phone onto the desk hard enough that the screen cracked. Alara flinched. "We need a statement," Adrian said without looking at her. "Something that reframes the narrative before it buries us." "What narrative? The truth is out there. We can't exactly lie our way out of a signed contract." "We don't lie. We contextualize." He finally turned to face her, and his expression was carved from stone. "The contract was real, yes, but the marriage became real. We fell in love during the arrangement. That's the angle." Alara's laugh was bitter. "No one's going to believe that." "They will if we sell it hard enough." "How?" "By holding hands and smiling for cameras while the entire world calls me a gold digger and you a joke?" Adrian's jaw clenched. "Do you have a better idea?" She didn't. That was the problem. They were trapped in a burning building with no exits, and all they could do was argue about which way to run. Margaret appeared in the doorway, face ashen. "Mr. Varelli, you need to see this." She held up her tablet. Another article. This one worse than the first. Not just screenshots of the contract, detailed breakdowns of the payment structure, quotes from unnamed sources claiming Adrian had a history of buying women, that this was just the latest in a pattern of control and manipulation. "It's Marcus," Alara said quietly. "He's not just leaking information. He's building a narrative." "Obviously." Adrian's voice was ice. "The question is how far he's willing to go." The answer came 20 minutes later. Adrian's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. He opened it, and his entire body went rigid. "What?" Alara moved closer. "What is it?" He turned the screen toward her. A photo. Victoria, the ex-fiancée, sitting in what looked like a hotel room, mascara smeared, looking devastated. Below it, a message. She's ready to talk every dirty secret you buried. Want to stop this? Meet me, alone. Tonight. The address was attached. Some industrial building on the waterfront. Alara's blood ran cold. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap. Then you can't go. Adrian's eyes met hers. I don't have a choice. If Victoria goes public with whatever Marcus has convinced her to say, this whole thing collapses. The company, the marriage, everything. So what? You meet him in some abandoned warehouse and what? Negotiate? He's not going to negotiate, Adrian. He wants you destroyed. Then I guess I'll have to make sure he doesn't get what he wants. Adrian wheeled toward the door. I'm leaving in an hour. Have Margaret prepare. I'm coming with you. He stopped, turned back slowly. Absolutely not. The message said alone. If I come, it changes the dynamic. He won't expect it. That's exactly why you're staying here. This is my fight, not yours. Alara stepped in front of him, blocking his path. We're married, remember? Contract or not, leaked or not. I'm part of this now. And if you go alone, you're walking into an ambush with no backup and a goddamn wheelchair. So either I come or I follow you anyway. Adrian stared at her. For a long moment, she thought he'd refuse, order security to lock her in her room. Then something in his expression shifted. You're insane, he said. I learned from the best. His mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. Fine. But you do exactly what I say. No arguments, no improvising. Understood? Understood. They left at 8, using a car from Adrian's private garage. Unregistered, untraceable. The driver was someone Adrian trusted, ex-military, built like a tank. He didn't ask questions, just drove. The city gave way to industrial zones, empty lots, buildings gutted and abandoned. The waterfront here was all rust and decay, ships that would never sail again rotting in contaminated water. The address led them to a warehouse at the end of a dead-end street, windows broken, door hanging off its hinges. This is a nightmare waiting to happen, Alara muttered as they pulled up. Stay close to me, Adrian said. And if things go wrong, you run. Don't look back. Don't try to help. Just run. I'm not leaving you. Alara, I said I'm not leaving you. She met his eyes. We're in this together, remember? He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he just nodded. The driver helped Adrian out into his wheelchair. Alara stayed at his side as they approached the warehouse. The door was unlocked. Inside, the space was cavernous, lit by a few work lights strung from the ceiling. Shadows pooled in the corners. The smell of oil and rust hung thick in the air. Marcus stood in the center of the space, hands in his pockets, looking almost relaxed. Victoria sat on a metal chair behind him, arms wrapped around herself, eyes red from crying. Adrian, Marcus said, his voice echoing. Punctual as always, and you brought the wife. How touching. Where's the leverage, Marcus? Adrian's voice was flat. You said Victoria had information. Let's hear it. Marcus smiled. Straight to business. I always appreciated that about you. Very well. He gestured to Victoria. Tell them. Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper. He knows about the accident. Alara's blood turned to ice. What accident? The one that put me in this chair, Adrian said, his voice carefully neutral. What about it? It wasn't sabotage, Victoria said, and now she was looking directly at Adrian. You know it wasn't. You were drunk. You'd been drinking all day because of the merger falling through, because of the board breathing down your neck. And you went to that construction site anyway, ignored every safety protocol, and when the scaffolding collapsed, her voice broke. 3 men died because of you. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Alara turned to Adrian. Is that true? His face was a mask. It's more complicated than, is it true? Yes. The single word hit her like a physical blow. She stumbled back a step, hand pressed to her mouth. Marcus's smile widened. Oh, it gets better. See, Adrian didn't just cover up his culpability. He paid off the families, buried the investigation, made it look like equipment failure when really it was just a drunk, arrogant bastard playing God. Shut your mouth. Adrian's voice was deadly quiet. Or what? You'll ruin me more than you already have? Marcus laughed. I've got nothing left to lose, Adrian. But you? You've got everything. Your company, your reputation, your shiny new contract wife, and I'm going to take it all away.
This is extortion, Ilara said, her voice shaking.
You're blackmailing him with information that could send him to prison.
I prefer to think of it as justice. Marcus pulled out his phone. I've already drafted the press release, every detail. The drinking, the negligence, the cover-up. One click and it goes to every major news outlet in the country. Adrian's hands were white-knuckled on the wheelchair. What do you want? What do I want? Marcus's voice turned vicious. I want you to know what it feels like to lose everything. But since that's not enough, I want $50 million. And I want a signed confession that you destroyed my career on false pretenses. You do that, and maybe, I don't destroy yours. That's insane.
That's the deal. You have 48 hours to decide.
Marcus started walking toward the exit, then paused.
Oh, and Adrian?
If you try to come after me, if you even think about retaliating, the information goes public immediately, along with proof that you knew about this conversation and chose to pay me off instead of facing justice. He was gone before either of them could respond, Victoria trailing behind him like a ghost. The silence that followed was suffocating.
Ilara couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Everything she thought she knew about Adrian, the control, the ruthlessness, the carefully constructed armor, it was all built on a foundation of blood and lies.
Ilara,
Adrian started.
3 men died.
Her voice was hollow.
You killed 3 men and you covered it up.
It wasn't like that.
Then what was it like?
Explain to me how drinking yourself stupid and ignoring safety protocols is anything other than negligence. Adrian's face was carved from granite. I was in a bad place. The merger had fallen through. The board was threatening to remove me. Everything I'd built was falling apart. I made a mistake.
A mistake?
A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday or being late to a meeting. This is... She couldn't even finish the sentence. Oh my God, I defended you. I stood by you, and you've been lying this whole time.
I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you.
That's the same thing.
It's not. Adrian's voice cracked, the first real emotion she'd heard from him.
I was trying to protect you from this, from the ugliness of who I really am.
Protect me.
Ilara's laugh was broken. You used me, just like you use everyone. You saw someone desperate and you exploited it. That's not fair.
Isn't it? You said it yourself. You thought I'd be easy to control. Well, congratulations. You were right. I was so desperate for money that I sold myself to a man who kills people and covers it up. Adrian flinched like she'd slapped him. I didn't kill them. It was an accident. An accident you caused. An accident you hid. Those families, did they even know the truth? They knew enough. That's not an answer.
It's the only one I have.
Adrian's voice was raw now, stripped of its usual control. Yes, I was drunk. Yes, I made a terrible decision. Yes, 3 men died and it's my fault and I've lived with that every single day since it happened. But I couldn't change it. All I could do was try to make sure their families were taken care of. By paying them off? By making them sign NDAs so they couldn't tell the truth?
By giving them enough money that they'd never have to worry again,
that their kids could go to college, that their mortgages would be paid, that they'd have something left after the grief. He looked at her, and his eyes were haunted. It wasn't about covering it up. It was about not letting them suffer more than they already had. Ilara wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe that somewhere under all the manipulation and control was someone who actually cared. But the evidence was right there, damning and undeniable. The investigation, she said. You buried it. I made sure it concluded quickly, yes, because a drawn-out trial would have destroyed the families more than it would have destroyed me. They'd already lost husbands, fathers. I wasn't going to make them relive it in court. How convenient that it also saved your reputation. Adrian's jaw clenched. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't spent every day since then wondering if I did the right thing? I live with this, Ilara. Every time I look at this wheelchair, I remember what I did, what I cost them, what I cost myself. The confession hung between them, raw and bleeding. Ilara's hands were shaking. I need to think. We don't have time to think. Marcus gave us 48 hours.
I don't care about Marcus right now. I care that I married someone I don't know, someone who's capable of...
She stopped, bile rising in her throat. I need air. She turned toward the exit,
but Adrian's voice stopped her. If you walk out that door, this is over. The deal, the marriage, all of it. You understand that? She looked back at him. Is that a threat? It's a fact. We're either in this together or we're not. And if we're not, then there's no point in fighting Marcus because he's already won. The words should have made her angry. Instead, they just made her tired. Maybe he should win, she said quietly. Maybe you deserve everything he's going to do to you. Adrian's face went blank. The mask slid back into place, and the man she'd seen glimpses of, vulnerable, honest, disappeared. Then go, he said, voice flat. The driver will take you back to the estate. Pack your things. I'll have the first payment transferred by morning. Consider the contract void. It was what she wanted, an out, an escape from this nightmare. So why did it feel like her heart was being ripped out of her chest? She walked to the door, stopped with her hand on the frame. Behind her, she heard Adrian's wheelchair move, the quiet whir of motors. He was leaving too, going to face Marcus alone, going to make whatever deal he had to make to survive. Or maybe not survive. Maybe Marcus would push too far and Adrian would push back and it would end the way these things always ended, blood and ruin and nobody winning. Alara closed her eyes, thought about the man she'd married, the bastard who'd blackmailed her into this arrangement, the man who'd sat with her at dinner and asked about her mother, who'd apologized for being harsh, who'd looked at her with something real in his eyes when he'd said they were in this together, the man who'd killed 3 people and covered it up, the man who'd lived with that guilt every day since. She didn't owe him anything. She didn't owe him loyalty or forgiveness or even basic human decency. He'd used her, lied to her, trapped her in a life she never asked for. But she thought about Marcus's smile, the cruelty in it, the way he'd enjoyed watching Adrian squirm. This wasn't about justice for him. It was about revenge, about destroying someone because he could. And if Alara walked away, she'd be helping him do it. God damn it, she whispered. She turned around. Adrian had stopped near the exit, his back to her, waiting, or maybe just accepting. If I stay, she said, and her voice was steel, you tell me everything. No more lies, no more convenient omissions, everything. Adrian turned his wheelchair slowly. Everything? Every secret, every buried body, every terrible thing you've done that I need to know about before this gets worse. Because it's going to get worse, isn't it? Yes. Then I need to know what I'm walking into. He studied her for a long moment. Why are you staying? Because you're right. We're either in this together or we're not. And as much as I hate you right now, and I do hate you, I hate Marcus more. I hate what he's doing, how he's doing it, and I'm not going to let him win. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Not relief exactly, more like recognition. All right, he said, I'll tell you everything, but not here. He glanced around the warehouse, suddenly aware of how exposed they were. Let's go home. We have work to do. The drive back was silent, but different from before. The tension wasn't hostile anymore. It was focused. They were planning, strategizing. 2 people who'd been on opposite sides of the board suddenly realizing they were playing the same game. Back at the estate, Adrian led her to his office. He poured himself a whiskey, offered her one. She took it. They sat across from each other, the desk between them like a negotiation table. Where do you want me to start? Adrian asked. The accident, the real story, not the sanitized version. He took a long drink, set the glass down with steady hands. I'd been drinking since noon. Scotch, mostly. The merger with Kellerman Industries had fallen through because someone on my team, someone I trusted, had leaked confidential information to their board. The deal was dead. $60 million gone. 3 months of work destroyed. His voice was matter-of-fact, recounting events like a grocery list. The board called an emergency meeting, told me I was losing control, that I needed to step back, let them bring in outside management. I refused, walked out. And then? Then I went to the construction site. We were building a new headquarters, state-of-the-art. I wanted to see something that wasn't falling apart, but I was impaired. I shouldn't have been there. The site manager told me the scaffolding wasn't secured yet, that they were still working on it. I ignored him. Went up anyway. Alara's stomach turned. And it collapsed. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later, couldn't feel my legs. Found out 3 workers had been killed in the fall. Found out the company was facing lawsuits. Found out the person who'd leaked the merger information was Marcus Kane. She blinked. Marcus caused the merger to fail? He was angling for my position. Thought if he could make me look incompetent, the board would remove me and give him control. Instead, I survived the accident. Used the sympathy and the lawsuits as leverage to root out the leak. When I found proof it was Marcus, I destroyed him quietly. Made sure he'd never work in this industry again. So he blames you for ruining his life when really he did it to himself.
Essentially. But that doesn't change what I did. The drinking, the negligence, the cover-up. I paid the families, yes, more than any lawsuit would have awarded, but I also made sure they signed agreements that kept them from talking, protected myself even while trying to help them. Alara drained her whiskey. You're right. You are a bastard. I never claimed otherwise. But you're a complicated bastard. She set the glass down. What else? What other secrets is Marcus going to use against us? Adrian hesitated. That alone told her this was worse. There's a woman, he said finally. Rebecca Thorne. We dated briefly 5 years ago. It ended badly. She tried to sue me for assault. Alara's blood went cold. Did you? No. I never laid a hand on her. But she claimed I did. Said I pushed her during an argument, that she hit her head. The truth is, she was unstable, obsessive. When I broke things off, she manufactured the incident to try to force me to stay. Can you prove that? I have security footage of the night in question. She's in the video, intact and unharmed. But the lawsuit still happened. I settled out of court, paid her to go away quietly. And now Marcus probably has proof of the settlement, which he'll spin as me buying my way out of assault charges. Jesus Christ, Adrian. What else? Business deals that walked the line of legality. Competitors I crushed using inside information. Tax structures that would make the IRS very interested if they knew where to look. He met her eyes. I've spent 20 years building an empire. You don't do that without getting blood on your hands. The weight of it settled over Alara like a shroud. This was who she'd married, not a villain from a movie, but something worse. A real person who'd made real choices that hurt real people. Why are you telling me this? She asked. You could keep lying. I'd never know. Because you asked, and because if we're going to fight Marcus, you need to know what ammunition he has. All of it. Adrian leaned forward. I'm not going to pretend to be a good man, Alara. I'm not. But I'm honest about what I am. And right now, I'm someone who needs your help. She should walk away. Every rational part of her brain screamed it. But the other part, the part that had said yes in the cathedral, that had signed the contract, that had stayed in the warehouse, that part knew she was already too deep. What's the plan? She asked. Relief flickered across Adrian's face. We fight back, but not the way Marcus expects. Meaning, he thinks I'll pay him off or try to bury the information. Instead, we go public, on our terms. Adrian pulled up a document on his computer, turned the screen toward her. We release a statement, acknowledge the contract, acknowledge that it was a business arrangement, but we also tell the truth, that somewhere along the way it became real. No one will believe that. They will if we show them. He opened another file. Photographs from the past week. Her and Adrian at the gala, in the library at dinner. Moments that had felt private but had been captured anyway. Security footage, she realized. From cameras throughout the estate. In the photos, they looked real. The way she'd rested her hand on his shoulder. The way he'd smiled at something she said. The exhaustion in both their faces. The vulnerability. These are from yesterday, Adrian said quietly. Before the leak. Before everything fell apart. Do they look like a business arrangement to you? Alara stared at the images. No, they didn't. They looked like two people who were starting to care about each other despite every reason not to. You had cameras on us the whole time? Security protocol. But I can use them to show that the marriage evolved. That we evolved. He closed the file. Then we address the accident. Head on. I release a statement taking full responsibility. No excuses, no justifications, just the truth. I was negligent, people died, and I've spent every day since trying to atone. That's career suicide. Maybe. Or maybe people respect honesty more than they respect a perfect lie. Adrian's voice was steady. Either way, it takes Marcus's leverage away.
He can't expose what I've already exposed. What about Rebecca? The other stuff. We address it all. Everything he might have, we put it out there first. Control the narrative before he can weaponize it. Alara's mind raced. It was insane. It would destroy Adrian's carefully constructed image. But it might save them. When? She asked. Tomorrow morning, we do a live interview. No scripts, no handlers, just us, answering questions honestly. You're betting everything on people believing we're genuine. I'm betting everything on the fact that we are genuine. At least, we're becoming genuine, whether we planned it or not. He held her gaze. But I need you with me, fully with me. Not just physically, but committed to this. To us. The weight of the request pressed down on her. He wasn't just asking her to play a role anymore. He was asking her to mean it. If I do this, she said slowly, and we somehow survive, what happens after? When the year is up? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. He leaned back. A week ago, I would have said we shake hands and walk away. Now I'm not sure I want you to walk away. The confession hit her like a freight train. She searched his face for the lie, for the manipulation, found only exhaustion and something that looked terrifyingly like hope. This is insane, she whispered. Yes. We could lose everything. Yes. And you're okay with that? I'm tired of living in a cage I built myself, Alara. I'm tired of being afraid of the truth. His voice dropped. I'd rather burn it all down and start over than keep pretending. She thought about her mother, about the medical bills that would be paid, about the freedom $2 million had already bought her. She could walk away with that, start over somewhere far from here. But she'd always wonder what might have happened if she'd stayed. All right, she said. We do the interview. We tell the truth. And we pray it's enough. Adrian exhaled, and it sounded like he'd been holding his breath for days. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We might both regret this. Too late for regrets. They spent the rest of the night preparing, going over every possible question, every attack angle Marcus might use. By the time the sun started rising, they were both exhausted, running on coffee and adrenaline. The interview was scheduled for 10 a.m. A major network, live broadcast, no delays. Alara dressed carefully. Not the polished perfection Vivian would have chosen, but something real. A simple dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back. She wanted to look like herself, not like Mrs. Varelli. Adrian met her in the foyer wearing a suit but no tie. Deliberate casualness. They were done with performances. The studio was chaos. Producers, cameras, lighting crews, everyone buzzed with energy. This was a major story. Billionaire's contract marriage exposed, live confession incoming. Ratings gold. The interviewer was a woman named Patricia Lang, known for her sharp questions and refusal to accept bullshit. She shook their hands, smiled like a shark. Thank you for doing this, she said. I know it can't be easy. Nothing about this has been easy, Adrian replied. Patricia gestured to the set. 2 chairs, a coffee table. Intimate but exposed. Whenever you're ready. They took their seats. Lights came up. Cameras started rolling. Somewhere, a countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2. Good morning, Patricia began, looking directly into the camera. I'm Patricia Lang, and today we have an exclusive interview with Adrian Varelli and his wife, Alara Varelli, about the contract marriage that has shocked the nation. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for having us, Adrian said. Patricia wasted no time. Let's address the obvious question first. Is it true that your marriage was initially a business arrangement? Yes, Adrian said simply. The admission sent a ripple through the studio crew. Alara saw producers exchange glances. Can you elaborate on that? Patricia pressed. My previous fiancé left me at the altar. It was a public humiliation that threatened both my personal reputation and my company's stability. Alara was there as the event planner. I offered her $5 million to marry me on the spot. He said it without flinching. She accepted. Patricia turned to Alara. $5 million is a significant sum. Were you coerced? No, Alara said, and her voice was steady. I was desperate. My mother has medical bills I couldn't pay. I was drowning in debt. When Adrian made the offer, I saw a way out.
so I took it. Do you regret that decision? Alara met Adrian's eyes, saw the question there, the vulnerability he'd never show anyone else. Ask me in a year, she said, echoing what she'd told him before. But right now, no, I don't regret it. Patricia leaned forward. The contract specified 1 year. Are you saying that even after everything that's been exposed, you intend to honor it? I'm saying that what started as a transaction became something more complicated, Alara said. Neither of us expected that. But here we are. Mr. Varelli, there are allegations that this isn't the first time you've used money to control people. Specifically, there are reports about an accident 3 years ago that left 3 men dead. Can you address those? The room went silent. Adrian's hands tightened on the armrests of his wheelchair. Yes. 3 years ago, I went to a construction site while intoxicated. Against safety protocols, I accessed unsecured scaffolding. It collapsed. 3 workers, James Morrison, David Chen, and Robert Garza, were killed. I survived, but lost the use of my legs. Patricia's expression didn't change. Were you held accountable? Not in the way I should have been. I paid the families, generously, but I also made sure the investigation concluded quickly. I protected myself at the same time I was trying to help them, and I've lived with that guilt every day since. Is that an admission of criminal negligence? It's an admission of responsibility, of culpability. Call it what you want. 3 men are dead because of my choices. The confession hung in the air, raw and damning. Patricia turned to Alara. Were you aware of this when you married him? No, I found out yesterday. And yet you're still here. Yes. Why? Alara took a breath. Because people are complicated. Adrian made terrible mistakes. He's done things I don't agree with, things that horrify me, but he's also trying to be better. And I believe in giving people a chance to be better. Even when they've killed people? Even then, because what's the alternative? We write people off forever for their worst moments? We never allow for growth or change? Alara's voice strengthened. I'm not saying what Adrian did was okay. It wasn't. But I'm saying I believe in accountability and I believe in redemption. And I think he deserves a chance at both. Patricia studied her. That's very forgiving. It's very human. The interview continued. Question after brutal question. Patricia asked about the Rebecca Thorne lawsuit, about Marcus Kane and the ruined merger, about every dark corner of Adrian's past. And Adrian answered, honestly, without excuses. When it was over, they sat in the green room watching the aftermath on the monitors. Social media exploded. Think pieces appeared in real time. The public was divided, some calling for Adrian's arrest, others praising his honesty. Well, Adrian said quietly, we did it. Yeah. Alara felt numb. We did. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went pale. What? Alara asked. He turned the screen toward her. Another message from Marcus. Brave. Stupid, but brave. Unfortunately, honesty doesn't erase crimes. The DA's office just received an anonymous tip about the accident. Complete with evidence your investigation was compromised. Expect criminal charges by end of day. Congratulations, you've confessed your way into prison. Alara's heart stopped. He can't. He can. And he did. Adrian set the phone down with shaking hands. I just gave them everything they need to prosecute me. On national television. The room spun. They'd bet everything on the truth, and they'd lost. Adrian's phone rang. His lawyer. He answered, listened, his face going grayer with each passing second. They're opening an investigation, he said when the call ended. Criminal negligence, obstruction of justice, bribery. I could be looking at 20 years. No. Alara grabbed his hand. No, we'll fight this. There's nothing to fight. I did it, all of it, and I just confessed on camera. The weight of what they'd done crushed down on both of them. They'd tried to control the narrative. Instead, they'd handed Marcus exactly what he needed to destroy them both. And there was no way back. The lawyers arrived within the hour. 3 of them, sharp suits and sharper eyes, spreading documents across Adrian's office like battle plans. Alara sat in the corner, watching them dissect the confession, calculate probabilities, discuss strategies in language that felt like knives slicing through what was left of their hope. The confession complicates things, the lead attorney, a woman named Sandra Reeves, said without preamble. You admitted culpability on national television. That's prosecutorial gold. Adrian's face was stone. Can we walk it back? No, it's out there. Recorded. Time-stamped. Sandra tapped her pen against the table. What we can do is mitigate. Argue that you were under duress, that the blackmail forced your hand. But that requires proving Marcus Kane orchestrated this whole thing. He did orchestrate it, Alara said. We have the texts, the threats. Text from an unknown number. No proof it was actually him. Sandra's expression was grim. And even if we could prove it, it doesn't erase what Adrian did. The negligence, the cover-up. A jury won't care that he was being blackmailed if they believe he deserved to be exposed. Adrian's jaw clenched. So what are you saying?
I'm saying we need leverage. Something that makes the DA hesitate before moving forward. Something that shifts the narrative from billionaire covers up deaths to something more complicated. Like what? Sandra exchanged glances with her colleagues. We need dirt on Marcus. Real dirt. Enough that if he pushes this, we can push back harder. He's already ruined, Adrian said flatly. I made sure of that. Then we dig deeper. Everyone has secrets. We find his. The meeting lasted another hour. When the lawyers finally left, promising to return with options by morning, Alara and Adrian sat in silence. The office felt like a tomb. I'm sorry, Adrian said finally. Alara looked at him. For what? For dragging you into this. For every decision that led us here. I walked in with my eyes open. Did you? Because I don't think either of us saw this coming. She couldn't argue with that. A week ago, her biggest problem was making rent. Now she was married to a man who might go to prison, implicated in a scandal that would follow her for the rest of her life. We need to find something on Marcus, she said. Something he doesn't want exposed. I've tried, for years. He's careful. Everyone makes mistakes, even careful people. Alara stood, pacing. What about Victoria? She's helping him. Why? What's he giving her? Adrian frowned. I don't know. Money, probably. Revenge. Or leverage. What if he has something on her, too? The thought hung between them, dangerous and promising. She wouldn't talk to us, Adrian said. Not after everything. Maybe she would if we offered her a way out. Alara turned to face him. You said you paid her to leave. What if Marcus is forcing her to betray that agreement? What if she's as trapped as we are? Adrian's eyes narrowed. It's possible. Then we find her. Tonight. Before the DA files charges. That's insane. We don't even know where she is. So we find out. Alara grabbed her phone, started searching. Victoria Marsh, no, Victoria Chen, now. She'd remarried. Social media accounts, public records, breadcrumbs scattered across the internet. It took 20 minutes, but she found an address. An apartment downtown, expensive but not ostentatious. Adrian watched her work, something like admiration in his expression. You're serious about this. You're going to prison unless we do something. I'd say that qualifies as serious. She grabbed her jacket. Are you coming or not? He studied her for a long moment. Then he moved toward the door. Let's go. They took the unmarked car again. No driver this time. Just the two of them, racing against a clock that was already counting down. The city at night was all neon and shadows. People living lives that didn't include criminal investigations or blackmail or marriages built on desperation. Alara envied them. Victoria's building was high-rise, security at the entrance. Adrian's name got them through. Fame had its uses. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor was silent, tension crackling between them like static electricity. Alara knocked on the door to apartment 2304. No answer. She knocked again, harder. Victoria, we know you're in there. We just want to talk. Still nothing. Adrian leaned forward. Victoria, it's Adrian. I'm not here to threaten you. I just need 5 minutes. The lock clicked. The door opened a crack, chain still engaged. Victoria's face appeared in the gap, makeup free, eyes red and swollen. Go away, she said, her voice hoarse. Please, Alara said. Just 5 minutes, then we'll leave. Victoria stared at her. You're the new wife.
The contract bride. I'm Alara, and yes. You should run while you still can. Probably, but I'm not going to. Alara met her eyes. Marcus is using you, just like he's using us. We can help each other. I doubt that. He has something on you, Adrian said quietly. Doesn't he? That's why you're helping him. Not because you want to, but because he's forcing you. Victoria's face crumpled. For a moment, Alara thought she'd slam the door. Instead, she closed it, undid the chain, and opened it fully. 5 minutes, she said. The apartment was pristine, almost sterile. White walls, minimal furniture, everything in its place. It felt like a showroom, not a home. Victoria gestured to the couch, stayed standing herself, arms wrapped around her torso like armor. What does he have on you? Adrian asked without preamble. Victoria laughed bitterly. Everything. Photos, videos, recordings, proof that I lied in the assault lawsuit, proof that you paid me to fabricate the whole thing. Alara's stomach dropped. Wait, you fabricated it? Not entirely. Adrian and I did date. We did fight, but I was never hurt, never assaulted. I was just... Victoria's voice broke. I was angry. Hurt. He ended things so coldly, like I was nothing, so I wanted to hurt him back. And I paid you to go away, Adrian said flatly. Made it worth your while to drop the lawsuit. Yes. And now Marcus has proof. If it goes public, I'm the one who goes to prison for false allegations, perjury, filing a fraudulent lawsuit. I could get 5 years. So he threatened you into helping him destroy me. Victoria nodded. He said if I testified about our arrangement, about how you pay people off to avoid consequences, he'd keep my secret. But if I refused... She wiped at her eyes. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I never wanted this. Alara felt a surge of unexpected sympathy. Where's the evidence? The proof Marcus has? I don't know. He showed me copies, but wouldn't tell me where the originals are. He's paranoid, keeps everything locked down. Adrian leaned forward. Does he have an office, a storage unit, somewhere he'd keep sensitive material? He has a place, an old building he bought before you ruined him. He never sold it. Uses it as a personal workspace, I think, but it's locked up tight. Security cameras, alarms, the whole thing. Where? Victoria hesitated. Victoria, Alara said gently. He's going to burn you too. You know that, right? Once he's done with Adrian, he won't need you anymore. And that evidence? It'll go public anyway because that's who Marcus is. He destroys people. The words hit their mark. Victoria's shoulders sagged. Industrial District, Warehouse Row, Building 47. But you can't just walk in. He'll know. Let us worry about that. Adrian's voice was cold, focused. The strategist coming back online. What's the security setup? I don't know exactly, but he mentioned motion sensors. And he has someone watching the feeds remotely. Of course he does. Adrian pulled out his phone, started typing. I know people who can handle that. Alara grabbed his wrist. What are you planning? Breaking in? Finding the evidence? Destroying it before Marcus can use it? His eyes met hers. It's illegal. If we're caught, it makes everything worse. But if we don't try, we lose anyway. Every rational thought in Alara's head screamed this was insane, but rational had stopped mattering somewhere around the moment she'd said yes in a cathedral. When? She asked. Tonight. Before the DA files charges. Before Marcus realizes we're onto him. Victoria's eyes widened. You're serious? Dead serious. Adrian looked at her. Will you help us? Tell us everything you know about the layout, the security. If I do this, I'm complicit. You're already complicit. The question is whether you want to stay trapped or take a chance at getting free. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, I'll tell you everything I know. They spent the next hour planning. Victoria sketched the building layout from memory, where Marcus's office was, where the security panel might be located, possible exit routes. Adrian made calls to people Alara didn't know, speaking in code about equipment and timing. By midnight, they had something resembling a plan. It was reckless, dangerous, probably doomed to fail. They did it anyway. The warehouse district was deserted at 2 a.m., just rusted buildings and empty streets. Building 47 looked abandoned from the outside. Broken windows, graffiti, no lights.
But Alara could see the cameras mounted at the corners, the new lock on the door. Marcus's fortress, disguised as a ruin. Adrian's contact, a wiry man who introduced himself only as Dimitri, approached the security panel with tools that looked disturbingly professional. 5 minutes, he said. Maybe less if the system is new. How long will we have once we're inside, Geet? Adrian asked. 15, 20 minutes before remote monitoring catches the loop. After that, all bets are off. Adrian nodded, turned to Alara. Last chance to back out. She thought about her mother, about the life she'd left behind, about every safe, reasonable choice she could have made instead of this one. I'm not backing out, she said. Dimitri worked in silence, bypassing locks and alarms with the efficiency of someone who'd done this too many times. The door clicked open. He stepped back. 20 minutes, starting now. They entered. The warehouse was dark, lit only by the ambient glow from windows. Alara used her phone flashlight to navigate, Adrian beside her in his wheelchair. The space was mostly empty, except for one corner that had been converted into an office. Desk, filing cabinets, a safe built into the wall. There, Adrian said, pointing. They approached. The desk was clean, organized, too organized. Like Marcus had been expecting company. Alara's skin prickled. This feels wrong. Everything about this feels wrong. Search the desk. I'll handle the filing cabinets. She opened drawers, rifling through papers. Invoices, business correspondence, nothing useful. The filing cabinets yielded more of the same, years of documents, all meticulously organized, none of it the smoking gun they needed. The safe, Adrian said. It has to be in the safe. The safe was old school, combination lock. Alara stared at it. Can you crack it? Not in 15 minutes. Then we need the combination. Adrian pulled out his phone, started searching. Marcus is methodical. He'd use something meaningful. Birthday, maybe, or... He stopped. The date of the merger, the one that failed. He blamed me for ruining his life. He'd remember that date. He tried it. The lock didn't budge. Damn it. Adrian tried variations, reverse numbers, different combinations. Nothing worked. Alara's phone buzzed. A text from Dimitri. 12 minutes. We're running out of time, she said. Adrian's jaw clenched. Think. What would Marcus use? What's important to him? Alara closed her eyes, thinking back to the warehouse confrontation. Marcus's voice. His words. I want you to know what it feels like to lose everything. The date you destroyed him, she said. When did you force him out of the company? Adrian's eyes widened. He tried the date. The lock clicked. The safe swung open. Inside were files. Dozens of them. Organized, labeled, damning. Alara pulled them out with shaking hands. Evidence of the accident cover-up. Victoria's fabricated assault claim. Photos of Adrian paying off families, recordings of phone calls. Years of ammunition, all waiting to be used. And at the bottom, a USB drive labeled insurance. Adrian grabbed it. We need to see what's on this. Not here, we take it and go. They gathered everything, stuffing files into a bag Alara had brought. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might explode. They were almost out, almost free. Lights flooded the warehouse. Alara froze. Marcus's voice echoed from speakers mounted in the ceiling. Did you really think I wouldn't know? That I wouldn't be watching? Adrian's face went pale. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap. Marcus stepped out from behind a stack of crates, phone in hand. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, both large, both armed. You've always been predictable, Adrian. I knew you'd come for the evidence. I just had to wait. Alara's legs felt like water. Marcus, You can what? Negotiate? Beg? Marcus laughed. You burned that bridge when you went on television and confessed. All you did was make my job easier. Adrian's hands tightened on his wheelchair. What do you want? I already told you. 50 million and a signed confession about what you did to my career. But now I think I'll add something to the price. Marcus looked at Alara. Her. I want her to publicly denounce you. Tell the world you manipulated her, threatened her, forced her into this arrangement. No, Adrian said immediately. Then I call the police right now. Breaking and entering, theft. I've got you on camera. I've got witnesses. You go to prison tonight. Alara's mind raced. They were cornered. No way out unless... I'll do it. she heard herself say. Adrian's head snapped toward her. What? I'll denounce him. Say whatever you want. She looked at Marcus. But you let him go. You drop the investigation. You destroy the evidence. You walk away. Marcus smiled. Now we're getting somewhere. No. Adrian grabbed her arm. Alara, don't. She met his eyes, saw the fear there, the desperation. It's okay. It's not okay. You can't. I can, and I will. She turned back to Marcus. Do we have a deal? Marcus pretended to consider. I suppose that would work. The narrative is almost better. Poor innocent girl realizes her husband is a monster, escapes his clutches. Very sympathetic. Then we're done. Let us leave. Of course. But first, Marcus gestured to one of his men. Insurance. Just to make sure you don't change your mind. The man grabbed Alara before she could react, yanking her away from Adrian. She struggled, but he was too strong, arm locked around her throat. Let her go. Adrian's voice was raw. Relax. She's collateral. Once you sign the confession and transfer the money, she walks free. Until then, she stays with me. Adrian's face went white with rage. If you hurt her, you'll what? You're in a wheelchair, Adrian. You're helpless. And that's the point. I want you to feel what I felt when you destroyed me. Powerless. Broken. Watching everything you care about slip away. The words hung in the air, vicious and true. Alara stopped struggling, met Adrian's eyes across the space between them. And in that moment, she understood something fundamental. This wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the evidence. It was about Marcus making Adrian suffer, which meant there was only one way to end this. Adrian, she said quietly, let me go. He stared at her, not understanding. The contract, the deal, all of it. Just let me go. Sign whatever he wants, pay whatever he asks, walk away. I'm not leaving you here. You don't have a choice. Her voice was steady, even as the man's arm tightened around her throat. This was always temporary, remember? 1 year. Consider it over early. She could see the moment he realized what she was doing, giving him an out, a way to survive this without sacrificing everything. His hands shook on the wheelchair. No. Yes, please. Her eyes burned. You tried to protect me. Now let me protect you. Marcus watched the exchange with interest. How touching. But she's right, Adrian. Take the deal. Sign the papers. Save yourself. Adrian's face twisted with something Alara had never seen before. Pure, unfiltered anguish. His hands gripped the armrest so hard his knuckles went white. Then he did something that stopped everyone cold. He stood up. The wheelchair rolled backward, empty. Adrian swayed, his legs trembling from disuse, from atrophy, from sheer force of will overriding physical limitation. His face was a mask of pain and concentration, but he was standing. Marcus's smile faltered. What? You want to know what I learned these past 3 years? Adrian's voice was steel. That I don't need my legs to be dangerous. I just needed a reason to fight. He took a step, then another. His whole body shook with the effort, sweat pouring down his face. But he kept moving, kept pushing forward. Let her go, Adrian said. And there was something in his voice that made the man holding Alara hesitate. Marcus recovered. Touching display. But it changes nothing. You're still outnumbered, still outplayed. Am I? Adrian pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Because while you were busy gloating, I sent everything from that USB drive to every news outlet in the city, with a timestamp, proof that you set this up, that you blackmailed Victoria, that you orchestrated this whole thing. Marcus's face went white. You're bluffing. Check your email. The receipts are there. For the first time, fear flickered across Marcus's face. He grabbed his phone, scrolled frantically. His expression shifted from confident to horrified in seconds. How did you... I had a dead man switch on my phone. The moment I stood up, it triggered, called it insurance. Adrian took another step, each movement clearly agony. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to let Alara go. You're going to disappear. And if I ever see you again, I'll finish what I started and make sure you never recover. The man holding Alara looked to Marcus for instruction. Marcus stared at Adrian, calculation warring with panic on his face. This isn't over, Marcus finally said. Yes, it is. Adrian's legs buckled. He caught himself on a crate, breathing hard. Now let her go before I change my mind about pressing charges for kidnapping. The man released Alara. She stumbled forward, straight to Adrian, catching him as his legs gave out completely. They collapsed together, Adrian gasping, his body trembling from the exertion. "You idiot," Alara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You complete idiot." "Had to," he managed. "Couldn't let him, couldn't lose." Marcus and his men were already backing toward the exit. "This isn't over," Marcus repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it is," Adrian said again, "and you know it." They disappeared into the night. Alara held Adrian, feeling his heart hammering against her chest, his breath ragged and painful. Dmitri appeared from wherever he'd been hiding, helping them toward the door. "Can you walk?" Dmitri asked Adrian.
"Did once. Don't think I can do it again." Adrian's laugh was broken.
Might have just blown out what was left of my spine for dramatic effect.
"It was pretty dramatic," Alara said, half laughing, half crying.
They made it to the car. Dmitri helped Adrian into the passenger seat while Alara collapsed in the back, the bag of evidence clutched to her chest. Her whole body was shaking, adrenaline crash hitting all at once.
"Is it really over?" she asked.
Adrian pulled out his phone with trembling hands, showed her the sent messages. Emails to journalists, to the DA's office, to his own lawyers. Everything from the USB drive. Marcus's blackmail schemes, his communications with Victoria, his manipulation of evidence. All of it exposed. "It's over," Adrian confirmed. "Marcus is done. By morning, he'll be the one facing charges." The drive back to the estate passed in a haze. Alara kept waiting for her heart rate to return to normal, but it stayed elevated, racing, like her body hadn't gotten the message that they'd survived. Inside, Margaret was waiting, face pale with worry. She took one look at them, Adrian barely able to stay upright, Alara covered in dust and trembling, and called for medical staff. "I'm fine," Adrian insisted, even as a doctor examined his legs. "Just overdid it."
"You stood," the doctor said, clearly shocked.
"Your chart says—"
"My chart is 3 years old. Things change."
Adrian winced as the doctor probed his muscles. "How bad is it?"
"You've likely torn some partially healed tissue, maybe strained ligaments. But the fact that you could stand at all—"
The doctor shook his head.
"You've been doing physical therapy?"
"Every day for 6 months. In private."
Alara stared at him. "You've been working on this? Learning to walk again?"
"Trying to. Wasn't sure it would ever work. Tonight seemed like a good time to find out. You could have been paralyzed permanently." "I was already paralyzed. Figured the risk was worth it." The doctor finished his examination, prescribed rest and anti-inflammatories, and left with a promise to return in the morning for a full assessment. Margaret ushered Alara to her room, insisted she shower and change, brought her tea she didn't drink. By the time Alara made it back downstairs, it was nearly 5 a.m. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that felt obscene after the night they'd had. She found Adrian in the library, sitting in his wheelchair again, staring out the window at the dawn. "Can't sleep either?" he asked without turning.
"No."
She sat in the chair across from him. They were silent for a long moment, just breathing, just existing in the aftermath. "Thank you," Adrian said finally, "for what you said in the warehouse, that you'd denounce me. I meant it. I know. That's what made it terrifying." He turned to face her. "You were willing to destroy your own reputation to save me. You stood up, literally stood up, for me. I've been working on it for months. Tonight just gave me a reason to try." Alara felt tears building again. "Why?"
"Why what?"
"Why work so hard to walk again? You've built an entire empire from a wheelchair. You don't need to walk to be powerful." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I wanted to be able to stand next to you. Not sit while you stood. Not be the broken thing you had to accommodate. I wanted to be—" He stopped, started again. "I wanted to be worthy of you." The confession shattered something inside her. All the walls she'd built, all the distance she'd tried to maintain, it crumbled. "You idiot," she said again, but there was no heat in it. Just exhaustion and relief and something that felt dangerously like love. "You were already worthy. Was I? Or were you just desperate enough to settle? Maybe at first, but now? She reached across the space between them, took his hand. Now I'm here because I want to be. His fingers tightened around hers. The contract. Forget the contract. Forget the money, the deal, all of it. I'm asking you, Adrian Varelli, the real you, not the empire or the reputation, do you want me to stay? He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much, done too much, survived too much. More than anything. Then I'm staying, not for a year, not for $5 million, just staying. The sun broke over the horizon fully, flooding the library with golden light. And in that light, Adrian smiled, really smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes and made him look younger, less burdened. Okay, he said simply. They sat together as the sun rose, hands clasped, the worst night of their lives giving way to something that felt almost like hope. Outside, the world was waking up. News would break about Marcus's arrest. Questions would be asked. The scandal would continue, probably for months. But for right now, in this moment, they had survived. Together. And that was enough. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted, surprise, then something like vindication. What? Alara asked. The DA. They're dropping the investigation into the accident, citing new evidence that the initial inquiry was conducted properly, that no laws were broken in the settlement process. He looked up. Marcus's attempt to reopen it just got shut down. How? The families. All three of them released statements saying I'd been generous, that they didn't want the case reopened, that Marcus was exploiting their grief for his own agenda. Adrian's voice was thick. They defended me. Alara felt tears slip down her cheeks. Maybe you did more good than you thought. Or maybe they're just decent people who don't want to see someone destroyed over an accident, even if I was culpable. He set the phone down. Either way, it's over. Marcus has nothing left. The relief was overwhelming. Alara let herself feel it, let the tension drain from her body. They'd won. Against impossible odds, they'd actually won. But the cost. She looked at Adrian, saw the exhaustion in every line of his face. You need to rest. Actually rest. So do you. Then let's both rest. Together. They made their way upstairs slowly, Adrian back in the wheelchair because his legs were done for the day. At the top of the stairs, they paused. Your room or mine? Adrian asked, and there was a vulnerability in the question that made Alara's heart ache. Yours, she said, if that's okay. More than okay. His room was larger than hers, darker, more lived in, books stacked on surfaces, papers scattered across a desk. Evidence of a life, not just a showpiece. They collapsed onto the bed fully clothed, too exhausted to care about propriety. Adrian's arm came around her, pulling her close. She rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow from frantic to steady. We survived, she whispered. We survived, he agreed. And then, finally, they slept. When Alara woke, it was afternoon. Adrian was still beside her, awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. How long have you been up? She asked. An hour, maybe 2. Didn't want to move and wake you. She stretched, wincing at sore muscles. What happens now? Now we figure out what a real marriage looks like, without contracts or ultimatums or blackmail. He brushed hair from her face, the gesture tender. If you still want that. I want that. Even knowing everything you know about me? Especially knowing everything. Alara propped herself up on one elbow. You're not a good man, Adrian, but you're trying to be better, and I think that counts for something. You're far more forgiving than I deserve. Probably, but I'm also stubborn, and I've decided you're worth the effort. He pulled her down into a kiss, slow, deep, real. When they broke apart, both were breathless. I love you, Adrian said, and the words sounded like a confession. I don't know when it happened. Maybe in the cathedral, maybe at dinner, maybe tonight when you were willing to sacrifice everything for me, but I do. I love you. Alara felt her chest tighten, emotions overwhelming her. I love you too, even though you're a complete disaster of a human being. Takes one to know one, she laughed. Actually laughed. After everything, somehow they could still laugh. Outside the window, the world continued. But in this room, in this moment, it was just them. Two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and somehow made it mean something real. The contract was void. The year was irrelevant. What they had now was a choice, and they were choosing each other every single day, starting now. The world didn't stop for their moment of peace. By evening, the news cycle had erupted. Marcus Kane arrested on multiple charges: blackmail, extortion, conspiracy, breaking and entering. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that he'd tried to frame Adrian for crimes while committing worse ones himself. Victoria had turned state's evidence, testifying in exchange for immunity. The whole empire of lies Marcus had built came crashing down in spectacular fashion. But the fallout touched everyone. Elara stood in front of the television, watching a legal analyst dissect the case. Her face appeared on screen, the contract bride who'd become something more. They showed clips from the interview, her voice steady as she defended Adrian. The comments were brutal. Half called her a gold digger who got lucky. The other half called her a victim suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Neither was right. Neither was entirely wrong. "Turn it off," Adrian said from behind her. He was in the wheelchair again, his legs still recovering from the night before. The doctor had been cautiously optimistic. With proper physical therapy, Adrian might regain partial mobility, maybe even walk short distances without assistance. But it would take months, maybe years. Elara muted the television but didn't turn it off. They're going to keep talking for weeks, months. Let them. Adrian rolled closer. What matters is what we know, what we choose to believe about ourselves. And what do we believe? He considered the question seriously. That we're both damaged, both made terrible choices, but we're trying to be better. That has to count for something. It did. But Elara couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing in the eye of a hurricane, and the worst was yet to come. The proof arrived 2 days later. A letter, hand-delivered by courier. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper with a message typed in neat, precise letters. You won the battle, but the war isn't over. I still have one card left to play. Check your mother's hospital. Elara's blood turned to ice. She was in the car within minutes, Adrian beside her, both of them racing toward the hospital where her mother had been receiving treatment. The drive took 30 minutes, but felt like hours. Elara's hands shook as she dialed her mother's number. No answer. She tried the nurse's station. They put her on hold. What could he do? She asked Adrian, voice breaking. He's in custody. He can't. He has people, loyalists who owe him favors. Adrian's face was grim. We need to get there, now. The hospital was chaos when they arrived. Security guards at the entrance, police cars in the parking lot. Elara's heart stopped. She ran through the doors, Adrian's wheelchair racing to keep up with her. Her mother's floor was cordoned off, yellow tape, officers taking statements. A nurse Elara recognized stood near the station, face pale. What happened? Elara demanded. Where's my mother? The nurse blinked. Mrs. Quinn is fine, she's in her room. But there was an incident. Someone tried to access her floor claiming to be family. Security stopped them before they got close. Relief crashed over Elara so hard she had to steady herself against the wall. Can I see her? Of course. Room 412. Her mother was sitting up in bed, looking confused and worried. When she saw Elara, her face crumpled. Elara, what's going on? The police said someone tried to... I know, Mom. I know. Elara crossed the room, pulled her mother into a hug. It's complicated, but you're safe. I promise you're safe. Her mother pulled back, studying Elara's face. This is about that man you married, isn't it? The one all over the news? Elara had been dreading this conversation. She'd called her mother after the wedding, given some vague explanation about a whirlwind romance. Her mother had been skeptical, but too sick to push hard. Now there was no avoiding it. Yes, Elara said quietly. It's about him. About a lot of things I haven't told you. Are you in danger? I was. Maybe still am, but we're handling it. Her mother's eyes moved past Elara to Adrian, who'd appeared in the doorway. Recognition flickered. You're him. The one she married. Adrian inclined his head. Yes, ma'am. Adrian Varelli. You brought danger to my daughter's life. Yes, ma'am. I did.
and I'm sorry for that. Alara's mother studied him with the sharp awareness of someone who'd spent a lifetime reading people. Are you going to keep her safe? I'm going to try, with everything I have. That's not the same as a promise. No, but it's the truth. Adrian met her gaze without flinching. I can't promise safety. I can promise that I'll stand between her and anything that tries to hurt her, and that I love her more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone.
The words hung in the air. Alara's mother looked between them, calculation and concern warring on her face. Finally, she sighed. Alara, come here. Alara sat on the edge of the bed. Her mother took her hand, squeezed it with fingers that trembled from illness and medication. Are you happy? Her mother asked quietly. The question shouldn't have been complicated, but it was. Happy felt too simple for what Alara felt. The fear and exhaustion and relief all tangled together. The love that had grown in the worst possible soil but bloomed anyway. I'm getting there, Alara said finally. It's messy and complicated and probably insane, but yes, I think I'm happy. Her mother nodded slowly. Then that's enough for me. But if he hurts you, she looked past Alara to Adrian. Wheelchair or not, I'll make you regret it. Adrian's mouth twitched into something almost like a smile. I believe you. They left an hour later after Alara had arranged for private security to watch her mother's floor. Marcus might be in custody, but he clearly still had reach. They couldn't take chances. Back at the estate, Alara felt the weight of everything pressing down on her. The danger wasn't over. Marcus was cornered, which made him more dangerous, and they'd exposed themselves completely. No more secrets, no more armor. Just two people standing in the wreckage of what they'd built, trying to figure out what came next. We need to end this, she said as they entered Adrian's office. Completely. No more threats hanging over us. I'm open to suggestions. Adrian poured himself a drink, offered her one. She took it. Marcus is in custody, but he still has loyalists, people willing to act on his behalf. Alara paced, thinking out loud. We need to eliminate that support structure. Make it so, even if he wanted to come after us, he couldn't. That means going after his network, his finances, everyone who owes him loyalty. Can we do that? Adrian's smile was sharp. Oh yes. I've been playing this game a lot longer than Marcus has. I just need to stop being defensive and go on the offense. They spent the next week systematically dismantling Marcus's remaining influence. Adrian used every connection, every favor owed, every piece of leverage he'd accumulated over 20 years. Bank accounts were frozen. Business licenses revoked. Associates who'd been helping Marcus suddenly found themselves under investigation for unrelated matters. It was ruthless, efficient, exactly the kind of thing that had made Adrian feared in the first place. Alara watched him work with mixed feelings. This was the man she'd married, cold, calculating, capable of destroying lives with a phone call. But now she understood the context. He wasn't doing it for power or ego. He was doing it to protect what mattered. He was doing it for her. The turning point came on a Friday afternoon. Adrian's lawyer called with news. Marcus had agreed to a plea deal. In exchange for testifying against his own network, he'd get a reduced sentence, 7 years instead of 20. Is that enough? Alara asked when Adrian relayed the information. It has to be. He'll be broke when he gets out. No connections, no resources, just a middle-aged ex-con with nothing but regrets. You sound almost sympathetic. I'm not, but I understand him better than I want to. Adrian set down his phone. He lost everything because of his own choices and spent years blaming me instead of accepting responsibility. I did the same thing after the accident. Blamed everyone but myself. The difference is I eventually faced what I'd done. Marcus never will. Alara sat beside him. Do you think he'll try again when he gets out? No, because by then he'll realize it was never about winning. It was about the fight, and the fight is over. 3 weeks passed. The media frenzy died down, replaced by new scandals, new tragedies. Adrian and Alara retreated from public life, taking time to actually be a couple instead of co-conspirators in survival. They had dinner together every night, real conversations, not strategic planning, learned each other's rhythms. Adrian was a morning person, sharpest before noon. Alara came alive at night, her best ideas arriving after dark. He liked silence. She liked music. They compromised. Slowly, the house stopped feeling like a fortress and started feeling like a home. One evening, 6 weeks after the warehouse confrontation, Adrian asked Alara to meet him in the garden. She found him by the fountain, actually standing, leaning on a cane but upright. Physical therapy had been brutal, but he'd attacked it with the same single-minded focus he brought to everything else. "You're walking," she said, unable to hide her smile. "Barely, but yes." He gestured to a bench. "Sit with me?" They sat together, the evening air cool and gentle. The garden was beautiful in the fading light, flowers blooming in colors Alara was just learning the names of. "I've been thinking," Adrian said, "about the contract." Alara's stomach tightened. "What about it?" "It's still technically in effect. You're still entitled to the remaining $3 million at the end of the year." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "But I want to give you a choice." He handed her the envelope. Inside were 2 documents. She pulled them out, read carefully. The first was a contract termination, immediate release from all obligations. The $3 million paid in full, no strings attached, clean break. The second was different, a prenuptial agreement, one that protected both of them equally. No timeline, no expiration, just a legal framework for an actual marriage. "I'm not asking you to choose right now," Adrian said quietly. "Take your time. Think about what you really want. Not what you needed 6 weeks ago, but what you want now, today." Alara stared at the documents. A week ago, the choice would have been obvious. Take the money, start over, build a life that didn't include danger and scandal and constant vigilance. But now she thought about the way Adrian looked at her in the mornings, the way he'd stood up in that warehouse even though it might have destroyed him physically, the way he'd dismantled Marcus's network, not for revenge but to keep her safe, the way she'd stopped seeing his wheelchair and started seeing him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything." "Why did you really ask me to marry you that day? The real reason, not the strategy." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. "Because when Victoria left, I realized I'd been surrounded by people who wanted things from me. Money, power, connections. No one actually wanted me. And when I looked at you standing in that cathedral, terrified but brave enough to be there anyway, I saw someone who didn't know who I was. Didn't care about the empire or the reputation. You saw a man in a wheelchair making a desperate offer, and you had the courage to take it." He turned to face her. "I asked you because for the first time in my adult life, I wanted something real, even if it started as a lie." Alara felt tears building. "That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me. I'm trying to make honesty a habit." She looked down at the documents again. The termination would be easy, safe, smart, probably. The prenup was a risk, a commitment to something that had started in chaos and might end the same way. But when had she ever played it safe? "I need to tell you something," Alara said, "about why I really said yes. You needed the money. I know. That's true. But it's not the whole truth." She took a breath. "When you made the offer, I'd already decided I was done. With the job, with the city, with trying to keep my head above water while everything fell apart. I was planning to leave. Go somewhere far away, start over, maybe not even tell my mother where I went because I was so tired of being the one who had to fix everything." Adrian's expression shifted. "Alara, let me finish. You offered me an escape, not just from debt, but from the person I'd become. Someone small and scared and defeated. And I thought, if I'm going to burn my life down anyway, why not burn it down spectacularly?" She laughed, the sound bitter. "I said yes because I had nothing left to lose. And then somewhere along the way, I found something worth keeping." "What?" "You. This. Us." She looked at him. "I'm not staying because of money or obligation or Stockholm Syndrome like the internet thinks. I'm staying because I want to see who we become when we're not just surviving." Adrian's hand found hers. "That's terrifying." "Good. I'd be worried if it wasn't." They sat in silence, fingers interlaced, the garden darkening around them. Finally, Alara took both documents and stood up. Walked to the fountain, held them over the water. Adrian watched, not interfering, barely breathing. She tore up the termination agreement. Let the pieces fall into the fountain, scattering across the surface. Then she folded the prenup carefully and tucked it into her pocket. "I'll sign this," she said. But I want to add something. What? A clause that says if either of us wants out, we sit down and talk about it like adults. No lawyers, no fighting, just honesty. She turned to face him. Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if you're only staying out of obligation. And you shouldn't wonder that about me. Adrian stood, slowly, carefully. But he stood, crossed to her without the cane, each step deliberate. Deal, he said, and kissed her. It wasn't their first kiss, but it felt different, lighter, like they'd finally put down weight they'd been carrying since the cathedral. When they broke apart, Alara rested her forehead against his. What now? She asked. Now we live. Actually live. Not just survive. I don't know how to do that. Neither do I. Adrian smiled. I guess we'll figure it out together. The wedding, the real one, happened 3 months later. Not in a cathedral filled with power players, not with photographers and press coverage, just a small garden ceremony with the people who actually mattered. Alara's mother, healthy enough to attend thanks to the treatments Alara could now afford. Margaret and Vivian and the staff who'd become something like family. A handful of Adrian's business associates who'd proven themselves loyal not to his money, but to him. Victoria came, surprisingly. She'd testified against Marcus, was rebuilding her life, and wanted to apologize in person. Alara had been hesitant, but Adrian had encouraged it. Forgiveness was hard, but holding grudges was harder. The officiant was the same one from the first ceremony. He'd found the whole situation darkly amusing and agreed immediately when they asked. Alara wore a dress she'd chosen herself. Simple, ivory, nothing like the designer gowns Vivian had suggested. Adrian wore a suit and stood at the altar, actually stood without the wheelchair, though the cane rested nearby just in case. When it came time for vows, they'd written their own. I can't promise perfection, Adrian said, voice steady. I can't promise that I won't make mistakes or that our life will be easy. But I can promise honesty. I can promise that I'll fight for us, for this, every single day. And I can promise that when I look at you, I see home. The first real home I've had in 20 years. Alara's turn. I can't promise I won't be scared sometimes, or that I won't want to run when things get hard. But I can promise I'll stay anyway. I'll choose you even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. Because you've taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the hard thing even when you're terrified. And loving you is the hardest, best thing I've ever done. They exchanged rings. Different ones from the contract ceremony. These had inscriptions inside. From chaos, choice in Adrian's, from desperation, devotion in Alara's. When the officiant pronounced them married, the kiss that followed was met with applause. Real, genuine applause from people who actually cared. The reception was held in the garden, string lights overhead, simple food, good wine. Alara danced with her mother, who cried and laughed and told her she was proud. Adrian made a speech that was surprisingly funny and self-deprecating. For one evening, they weren't billionaire and contract bride. They were just two people celebrating the fact that they'd found each other, despite every reason they shouldn't have. Later, after the guests had left and the caterers were cleaning up, Alara and Adrian sat on the bench by the fountain, the same bench where she'd torn up the termination agreement. No regrets? Adrian asked. Alara considered. Thought about the cathedral, the contract, the warehouse, Marcus, the investigation, every terrifying moment that had led them here. No regrets, she confirmed. You? Just one? Her heart skipped. What? That I didn't ask you to dance at the first wedding. We should have had at least one dance before everything went insane. Alara laughed, relief flooding through her. We can fix that. She pulled out her phone, found a song, something slow and sweet, held out her hand. Adrian stood, took it. They moved together in the garden, barely swaying, more just holding each other than actually dancing. His legs would give out soon, Alara knew, but for now, he was standing. They were standing together. I love you, she said quietly. I love you too. Adrian's voice was rough. Thank you. For what? For saying yes, in the cathedral. For staying when you could have run. For believing I could be better than I was. You already were better. You just needed someone to see it. No, I needed someone to demand it. He pulled back slightly, looked at her. You made me want to be the kind of man who deserves you.
I'm still working on it. Good. Don't stop. They danced until the song ended, then another song, and another. The night stretched on, stars appearing overhead, the city lights distant and irrelevant. Eventually, Adrian's legs began to shake. Alara helped him to the bench, sat beside him as he caught his breath. I'm going to keep working, he said, the physical therapy, until I can walk without the cane. You don't have to. I don't care if you... I know you don't. That's why I want to. Not for you. For me. He squeezed her hand. I spent 3 years thinking the wheelchair defined me, that I'd lost something essential when I lost the ability to walk. But you've shown me that's not true. I'm still me, still capable. The wheelchair was never the prison I thought it was. Then why keep trying? Because I can. Because every step is proof that I'm stronger than the worst thing that ever happened to me. He looked at her. Does that make sense? It did, more than he probably knew. Yeah, Alara said. It makes perfect sense. They sat in comfortable silence, Alara's head on Adrian's shoulder, his arm around her waist. The garden was peaceful, the fountain's steady trickle the only sound. What do we do now? Alara asked eventually. With the rest of our lives? Adrian considered. Live them, run the company, travel, maybe. Have arguments about what to watch on television. Figure out if we want kids someday. Grow old together and argue about who's more difficult. That sounds terrifyingly normal. I know. Revolutionary, isn't it? Alara smiled. Normal had never appealed to her before, but with Adrian, it sounded like the greatest adventure of all. 6 months later, Alara sat in the library, reading through proposals for a new venture. She'd taken an active role in Varelli Industries, focusing on the philanthropic arm. They'd established a foundation in the names of James Morrison, David Chen, and Robert Garza, the 3 men who died in the accident. It funded construction safety initiatives, supported families of workers killed on job sites, and pushed for stronger regulations. It didn't erase what had happened. Nothing could. But it was something, a way to honor them and acknowledge the cost of Adrian's mistakes. Adrian appeared in the doorway, walking with just a slight limp now. The cane was gone, retired last month to applause from his physical therapy team. There's someone here to see you, he said. Alara looked up, surprised. Who? Marcus Kane. Every muscle in her body tensed. What? He's out on work release. Part of his plea deal includes community service, and apparently he requested to speak with us. Both of us. Alara's first instinct was to refuse. They'd moved on, built something good from the wreckage. Why invite poison back into their lives? But something in Adrian's expression made her pause. You think we should see him, she said. I think closure matters. For all of us. They met Marcus in the formal sitting room, neutral territory. He looked smaller than Alara remembered. Prison had aged him, graying hair, lines around his eyes, shoulders hunched in a way that spoke of defeat. He sat across from them, hands folded in his lap like a penitent. Thank you for seeing me, he said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. We almost didn't, Adrian replied. His voice was neutral, giving nothing away. Marcus nodded. I don't blame you. He stopped, seemed to gather himself. I wanted to apologize, not because my lawyer said it would look good, or because I'm trying to get time reduced, just because you deserve to hear it. Alara studied him, looking for the manipulation, the angle, found only exhaustion and something that looked like genuine remorse. I spent years blaming you, Marcus said to Adrian, for the merger failure, for losing my job, for everything that went wrong in my life. And the worst part is I knew it was my fault. I leaked the information. I sabotaged the deal. But admitting that meant admitting I'd destroyed my own life. And that was too painful. He looked up, met Adrian's eyes. You didn't ruin me. I ruined myself. And then I tried to take you down with me. Adrian's expression didn't change. You almost succeeded. I know. And I'm sorry, to both of you. Marcus turned to Alara. I used you, threatened you, put your mother in danger. There's no excuse for that. I want you to know I regret it. Alara felt something loosen in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but something close to it. Why are you really here, Marcus? Because in prison, I had a lot of time to think about who I was, who I became,
And I realized I'd turned into the exact thing I hated, someone who hurt innocent people to satisfy my own ego. He stood slowly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did, and I'm sorry. He left without waiting for a response. Adrian and Alara sat in silence after he was gone. Do you believe him? Alara asked finally. I think he believes he's sorry. Whether that translates to actual change, Adrian shrugged. Time will tell. Does it matter? Do we forgive him? Adrian considered. I don't know if I can forgive what he did, but I can let go of the anger. I spent too many years letting grudges poison me. I don't want to do that anymore. Alara reached for his hand. Then we let it go. Move forward. Together. Together. 1 year after the contract wedding, they threw a party. Not an anniversary celebration. They counted their real anniversary from the garden ceremony. But a memorial of sorts, of where they'd been and how far they'd come. The same cathedral where it had all started. But this time, they'd rented it for a charity gala benefiting the Construction Safety Foundation. The same faces who'd watched Alara say yes to a stranger now watched her and Adrian move through the crowd, clearly in love, clearly partners in every sense of the word. Catherine Marsh approached them, champagne in hand. Well, Adrian, I'll admit I didn't think this would last, but you've proven me wrong. That seems to be a theme, Adrian replied dryly. Catherine laughed. Indeed, and you, she turned to Alara, have done something I never thought possible. You've made him human. He already was human, Alara said. He just needed someone to see it. Gracious and diplomatic. You're good for him. Catherine raised her glass. To unlikely love stories. They clinked glasses, drank. Later, standing in the same spot where Adrian had made his offer, Alara looked around the cathedral. So much had happened here. So much had changed. Regrets? Adrian asked, echoing the question from their wedding reception. Alara thought about it, really thought about it. The fear, the danger, the public humiliation, the growth, the love, the discovery of strength she hadn't known she possessed. No, she said finally. No regrets. You? Adrian pulled her close, kissed her forehead. Just one. What? That I didn't ask you your favorite color before I proposed. Seems like something a husband should know. Alara laughed. Green, the dress you chose for the gala. That shade. I'll remember that. They stood together as the gala continued around them, the cathedral filled with music and light, and people who'd come to support a cause that mattered. The three families were there, Morrison, Chen, and Garza. Their children, grown now, had spoken earlier about the foundation's impact, about how it had turned tragedy into something meaningful. It wasn't redemption. Adrian had been clear about that. You didn't redeem yourself from causing deaths, but you could acknowledge it, face it, do everything in your power to prevent it from happening to others. That was enough. It had to be. As midnight approached, Adrian and Alara slipped out of the cathedral, leaving the party behind. They walked to the car. Adrian's limp barely noticeable now, though Alara knew his legs ached after long days. Home? She asked. Home, he agreed. The estate appeared through the trees, lit from within. No longer a fortress, just a home where two people lived and loved and fought and forgave and tried their best to be better than they'd been yesterday. Inside, they collapsed onto the couch in the library. Their library now. Filled with books they'd chosen together, photos from the real wedding, mementos from a year of building something real from fractured pieces. I've been thinking, Adrian said. Dangerous. He smiled. About the future. What we want it to look like. And I think, maybe, I'd like to step back from the company. Not completely, but enough to actually live. Travel with you. Spend time doing things that matter instead of just accumulating more money I don't need. Alara sat up, surprised. You do that? I've spent 20 years building an empire. I think I've earned the right to enjoy it instead of just defending it. He took her hand. What do you think? Want to see the world with me? Yes. The answer came immediately, instinctively. Yes, absolutely. Good. Because I already bought tickets to 6 countries and cleared our schedules for the next 3 months. Alara laughed, shoving him lightly. You're supposed to consult your wife before making decisions like that.
I know, but I also know you, and I knew you'd say yes. Presumptuous. Accurate. They kissed, and it was easy, comfortable, the kind of kiss that came from knowing someone completely and choosing them anyway. Later, lying in bed with Adrian already asleep beside her, Alara stared at the ceiling and thought about the girl who'd stood in a cathedral a year ago. Desperate, scared, making a choice that would change everything. She'd gotten the money, paid her mother's medical bills, cleared her debts, built a life beyond anything she'd imagined. But more than that, she'd found something she hadn't known she was looking for. Purpose. Partnership. Love that was earned, not given. Adrian stirred beside her, his arm tightening around her waist even in sleep. She pressed closer, feeling his heartbeat steady against her back. The contract was void. The year was over. They'd survived everything Marcus had thrown at them, everything the world had thrown at them. And they'd chosen each other every single day. That was the real victory, not the money or the status or the vindication, just two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided to build something beautiful from the ruins. Alara closed her eyes, finally at peace. Tomorrow they'd start planning their trip. 6 countries, 3 months, countless adventures ahead. But tonight, this was enough. This was everything. In the darkness, she whispered, "Thank you." Adrian's voice came back, drowsy but certain. For what? For being brave enough to ask. For seeing something in me I didn't see in myself. For loving me even when it was complicated. Especially when it was complicated. He pulled her closer. Thank you for saying yes. Then and every day since. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, the future uncertain but theirs to write. And somewhere in the night, if you'd been listening very carefully, you might have heard the echo of 2 words that started it all. I do. Not a contract anymore, not an obligation, just a promise, one they'd keep for the rest of their lives. The cathedral where it began stood silent under the stars, empty now, waiting for the next ceremony, the next vows, the next beginning. But if walls could remember, these would hold the story of Adrian and Alara, the billionaire and the event planner, the contract that became real, the marriage that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Because sometimes the most unlikely stories are the ones worth telling. Sometimes you find love in the last place you'd think to look. And sometimes, when you have nothing left to lose, you find everything worth keeping. Their story was finished, but their life together was just beginning. And that made all the difference.